Well, I'm going to wait till...
Yes, we got an answer, yes.
Yes, see, they heard you. They heard Doreen. All right, so you guys from the background know that we're on the air. We're going to start in just a few more seconds here, but I want you to give a little appreciation for the lady behind the camera.
Who's in pain tonight. Yeah.
She's toughing it out, man. She's just there for us.
And
she always is.
Our TST vice president, who usually operates the board, Pierre, is out sick, real sick.
Yeah. So
he hasn't missed one. This is the first time ever.
Yeah. So it's just us trying to make all this work.
Thank you all.
Well, we
thank
thank
all
you.
guys.
Right?
Yeah.
We couldn't do it without them.
We appreciate you coming out and hanging out with us on a Saturday night. Just like us, we have no other place to be.
Yeah.
Well,
I don't know about that.
Maybe.
No.
Okay. Yeah, once again, we're being held to the limit by our lovely director, producer in the background there. It's 8 o'clock. Welcome, everybody, to tonight's webinar, Hybrid Scan Tool Diagnostics. I am Pete Meyer, technical editor for Motor Age, here, as always, with my good friend and conspirator in crime.
G. Trulia, president of TST and ATTS. And tonight we have some good info for them.
Yeah, and I'm kind of looking forward to this because, I mean, we were talking about this over dinner. It's like the hybrids have been on the U.S. roadways now for almost 20 years, but they're still not that common in a lot of shops. I mean, some of the guys watching are probably, have some practical experience, and maybe those of you out there who have like none. And I've done all the reading, but I had very few opportunities to deal with this stuff, so I'm really looking forward to tonight.
Good. The first thing when it comes to hybrids, what type of work do we do on them? A lot of shops are doing an oil change, and you don't have to worry about doing an oil change. But let's talk about air conditioning.
Yeah.
Air conditioning, you do have to be careful. You need a special 134A machine, or you need to purchase a special piece of equipment from AirSept. The AirSept thing I always showed in my classes. Why do we need that, Pete? Because what oil goes in 134A, everyone? We use this oil all the time, right? It's called what?
Yeah, the PAG oil, right?
Could we use that in a hybrid vehicle?
Well, I kind of already know that one, but...
You could put it in there, but what's going to happen?
Yeah.
PAG is an alkaline, and you got high voltage, whether it be AC voltage or DC voltage. There's two different types of compressors, but it doesn't like that oil. So what you should do to protect yourself and your customer is purchase either a separate machine and never put PAG oil in it. Okay, it's a special polyester type of hybrid oil. Many companies make it now, okay? Yeah. UView, name some of the other names. FJC, there's a whole bunch of them. Yeah. I mean, we use UView and FJC, excuse me. Those are the two we use here besides the dealer stuff.
Right.
We've replaced quite a few different compressors.
Well, and to be clear for the guys who are watching tonight and maybe down the road a piece, what we're referring here to is the fact that a lot of the hybrids are using electric compressors, high voltage compressors, right? So PAG oil is conductive. If you even get, I think it's even as little as 0.1% contamination because you're using the same machine into that system, you could end up with an HV, high voltage isolation fault. Not necessarily where, oh my God, I'm going to touch the side of the car and kill myself because of that mistake, but the car's not going to start.
That's right.
Because it's going to disengage the HV system for safety's sake. And if, God help you, if you ran the compressor, even for a minute, because now everything in the system is contaminated. You got to replace everything in the system. So that's what we're talking about here. And you can see that when we actually have an AC webinar coming up next time, where we're going to talk about some of that, especially like the R1234 systems now. These cabinets don't even allow oil injection, so. No oil injection at all. Yeah. Do we have a question?
Mm-hmm. Is there a new AC oil for hybrids with the new 123.4YF
Okay.
standard?
The question is there a special hybrid oil for the new refrigerant R1234YF? Yes, there is. That is, again, a non-conductive, non-PAG oil.
Right, POE style.
It's a POE style, and now if you look at every compressor now, Toyota's an ND11 is the most common one they use. You'll see it on the tag under the hood of the car. I know that one because obviously Priuses are very popular.
Right.
And the Camrys and stuff. So look under the hood of the car. It will tell you what type of oil with the factory oil. And like I said, we do use the UView stuff, and we do use FJC. FJC I've used for years, even on non-hybrid vehicles. Works good. You could get it with the dye. But you should be aware of this, and I guess we do that webcast a couple of months from now.
Yeah, it was at 3 months.
Yeah.
We'll be back again.
Now, the other thing to remember, I mentioned this right prior to going on, when we talk about hybrid service, we also have to worry about what type of tires we put on a car. This is a common mistake out there. The other common problem is the 12-volt battery is not replaced. You know why? And let's take it on a Prius, for example. Prius uses a glass mat battery, Gen 1, 2, 3, but not Gen 4. Gen 4, the glass mat battery is gone. It's a lead acid under the hood of the car. Usually glass mat batteries are anything that's in the car. Now, why do I bring this up? Because here's a major problem. People start the car up because it only needs a little bit to get through the SMR, system main relay. So all you need is a little voltage to make low voltage go to high voltage, and you're good. So they neglect that battery. What happens? Your mileage per gallon starts dropping. You should look up on the customer's indicator in their car, how many miles on the eye candy stuff they're getting. And you need to check that battery by load testing it. Whether you're using Medtronics or Snap-on or Associated or a Joe Schmo brand tester, who's ever tested, you got to check that 12-volt battery. Those batteries, people don't realize that what's happening is the converter, because you have an inverter and a converter, the converter is basically charging that battery up. And it gives people a false thing, oh, I don't need a battery. Now, we did a customer's car with an air conditioning compressor on a Prius, besides some other, I think a water pump and a couple other things on it. But she came in here, she needed a circulator pump as well. And we told her she needed a 12-volt battery. Now, she had a pretty big bill. I think we even did her high voltage battery as well, because she had some problems. She was recommended from another shop to us. But I told her about a 12-volt battery. She didn't want to go for it. Well, about 3 months later, we had a cold snap here in New York. Sure as hell, she had a problem. She was stuck. She called me up. It wasn't worth her towing the car here. I told her to go to the closest Toyota dealer or, ASE repair shop that works on hybrid vehicles to put the right battery in, and her problem would be solved. And it is, but that's often overlooked. Yep. So those are just some of the tidbits, and using the correct oil. Let's say we're on a Honda IMA, integrated motor assist, you better use 020. The orifice is about the size of a ballpoint pen. You start going, we don't need that. I'm going to put 1020 or 1030 or 530. I don't need that. You're going to have problems. And miles per gallon is going to drop. You're going to do damage to what they call the VPS system, valve pause system. So you need to know some of these basic things. But with that out of the way, Pete, let's move on, because we are talking about hybrid scan tools and DTCs associated with them. First thing is always safety. If you're going to take anything apart working on a hybrid, Pete, we need to know safety. This is off a Ford vehicle, and they only give you this symbol, and they show you this thing once, okay? So you got a RTFB. Read the frickin' book. That's what they have right there, okay? You got to read it. It tells you you can be seriously injured, shocked or burned, or you could die. So make sure you have the right equipment, and we'll talk about the equipment. Yeah. Lethal voltages, obviously, low voltage, anything we've been working with this year's 12-volt system, anything, in that range is okay. The intermittent, the blue or the green, this is 42 volts. And now, by the way, if you read AE, Automotive Engineering from SAE, 48-volt system is coming back. Remember, we got the corporate average fuel economy, the CAFE, 54.5 miles a gallon by 2025. Electrification is going to happen, meaning you're going to have more hybrids or more pure electric vehicles out there. Yeah. So you're going to see more of this. High voltage, anything over 60 volts. Well, that's a lot of hybrids, okay? So we need to have the right stuff. You need wheel chocks. Why? Well, these cars are silent. They're like a golf cart, okay? Now, when we bring a hybrid in, that doesn't start the motor, we make sure we chock the wheels. We have chock blocks under the wheel. Very important because you don't want a runaway vehicle, okay?
Isn't it true, though, too, even if you, another reason for that, and correct me if I'm wrong, but I remember seeing this somewhere, you want to make sure the wheels aren't turning, especially the ones connected to the motor generators, because if they're turning, then that generator is generating a lot of juice.
Hell of a lot of juice. Remember, you know, you're looking at a Gen 2 type of Prius, you're probably using 5 to 650 AC volts that is going to that motor. Yeah. And the battery in them is roughly 201 volts, being boosted up to about 650 or so. That's a hell of a lot of voltage. And remember that the inverter takes DC, makes it AC for the electric motor, and then when we do regen, it does the reverse.
Right.
Takes AC, makes it DC. So you need some proper equipment. You're going to need not only the high volt gloves, okay, which are 1,000 volt rated, but you're going to need special covers that are rated. And these things got to be checked every 6 months. If you're a shop owner, or even if you're working, and my pole is right near Doreen, it's hanging up right there. This pole right here, it's called a rescue pole or pull pole. This is mandatory to have. If you ever get an inspection from someone that knows what they're doing, whether it's a motor vehicle department or OSHA, especially OSHA, and you don't have this pole or these safety gloves, you're going to have a problem if it says, we service hybrids outside your shop. Mm-hmm. You know, gloves are roughly with covers and a bag and some special powder. You're roughly at about $150, $120, somewhere in that range.
Yeah. Poles
now have come down. Now the new ones that cost me $200 to get from New Jersey to here, just in shipping. Never mind the pole. But now they make them with a pole screw apart. They're a lot cheaper. You won't have to spend that much in shipping. So a pole probably with shipping will cost you somewhere in the $300 range. Yeah. Good idea to have because, you know, if your gloves only go to here and you pull the guy with them and he hits you here, you're done. Okay? Yeah. So just safety first.
And I'm kind of curious. I'm sorry. I'm just kind of curious for the guys who are watching tonight. If you could, let's just do a mini little poll real quick. In the comment section, how hybrid active are you in your shop? If you say if you're doing 1 or 2 a year, you know, give me a you know 1 or 2 a year, or if you're doing them
just
every
put a
day,
number in.
You know, give us some idea of what your personal hybrid experience is. Are you new to hybrids, or are you old hands and you're looking to get the more detailed stuff? I'm just curious as to what kind of folks are watching.
Cool. Anything there, Doreen, or nothing really? Okay. And how many out there is anyone rebuilding batteries? And we're not talking about replacing them. I'm not going to get into names of companies. We just had to do one that comes in this big thing that looks like a coffin. And it was only because the customer wanted to go that way. And we told them right on their bill that it's going to fail. Yeah. You know, so you want to do the right thing.
Kind of response there. What do you got?
What do we got?
Well, we got 1 or 2 a year.
Okay.
Interested in learning.
Good.
Primary maintenance, done a few HP batteries. Just routine services at this point, about 6 or 8 times a year.
Okay, very good.
Okay, so we have to repeat that for everyone.
Feel, and that's good. Yeah, you guys are right. Kind of your toes are in the water, and you're feeling what the pool feels like. Yeah. So that's good. That's
good. 1 to 2 a year. Some guys are, you know, changing batteries, which are failing now. Yeah. Like you said, hybrids have been on the road 20 years. So batteries, especially like the one behind me, this is a Honda Insight. Okay, and Joel, that's the back of you. I remember Joel being in my class. So here is a 1449 DTC. And I'm going to tell you that on the motor generators, whether it's an Insight, whether it's a Civic or Accord, they're going to have the same problem. The batteries, especially on the older ones, are the cylindrical batteries, meaning they're the round batteries that are basically like a D-size cell battery.
Like a D-cell.
The problem there is they don't cool right. Now, what you need to do is vacuum out all the ducts. This car here, this girl threw her gym bag back there blocking the vent, overheated her battery. And let's not forget what it says under the hood of this car. You need to start these cars up. This is Honda's recommendation. At least once a month to activate that battery to get something going through it, or you're going to run into problems. So that is a biggie. So $1449, this is the Honda factory scan tool. At the time, the MVCI, which is you can still use up to the current unit, but now we do everything right off the internet with Honda. And you can see it says battery module deterioration, okay? So that's what a 1449 is. But notice they tell you it's a code 78. Honda uses their own code systems. So you can see here we have a 69-3 as well, a IMA malfunction. You have some other codes here, permanent codes and other ones, but the big one is the battery. A tip for you, when you start getting all these other codes, and notice I didn't go with those codes first, the first thing you need to do, Pete, is really go after the battery. You know the old thing, we discussed this prior today, the basics fix things.
Yeah.
And the basics here, gentlemen, would be checking the battery. Now this car has two system main relays. You'll hear click, click, right-hand side of the car, passenger side of the car. The Insight is in the back trunk lid, or the other two, the Civic and the Accord, is the back seat, and it'll be on the right-hand lower corner there. Now, even though if they click on, because Honda makes a very robust system, if that battery is bad, this car is going to have a problem.
Yeah.
And let's talk about this car in particular. Do you know what size motor in here? It's a 3-cylinder motor. It can't get out of its own way. It's a standard transmission. And when I say can't get out of its own way, typically these people will say, I get to a hill and I barely can get up if I can get up it. You get a steep hill, my driveway, it would never get up.
Yeah.
No way. It would not do it, okay? So when you see that, you need to check the battery. I'm not a big fan of a lot of the rebuilt batteries that are out there. Now, if you're going to get something from a junkyard, well, guess what? It's going to be junk, because once these batteries reach 10 years old, you can't do much with them. So what we do is we buy these off Honda. Honda has TSBs that the pack itself, the box that I think we got a picture coming up of, yeah, okay. The box itself is not new, only the battery cells are new. Now, some remanufacturer companies, all they do is clean them up, charge them, send them out to you, you throw the battery in the car, and then within 6 months, or definitely less than a year, you're getting that battery back. You'd be better off if you don't have, in case you're wondering what this wire mess is, this is a charger that is going to charge all of these cells and tell me on a computer which ones are bad, okay? Now, the only reason why we charge this pack up, this pack was warranted by Honda at one point. Honda is very generous, with their warranty. So what happened with this one, she overheated it with her bag back there, and she didn't use it a lot. She lives in New York City, and she would leave it and not utilize it. But we got this thing back to life. And this is one way to do it if you have the equipment. Is it worth for everyone to own the equipment? Nah, it's very expensive. I mean, if you want a good piece of equipment like this, there's quite a few people out there. Medtronic does not sell their equipment. They only sell it and make it for OEs.
Yeah.
So far, nothing to the aftermarket. You have Marquardt, who has his battery type charger. It doesn't do it like this. This is in parallel. This is Nuvant. Nuvant does it in parallel, so you actually charge like you would charge a 12-volt battery.
Right, gotcha.
It's a lot better. There's also another one through a very inexpensive unit. When I say inexpensive, $1,000 to $1,200 range that I utilize in the class as well. It is from Mike Dabrowski made it, and the company now is, boy, I forgot the name of the company. Anyway, it's a good unit. If you email me, I'll probably remember the name. I suck at names and don't remember that one.
I got two things I want to kind of ask at this point.
Please.
I know you talked about, you know, they're blocking the vent, right? All these batteries had to be kept at a certain temperature range.
Correct.
They can't get too cold. They can't get too hot. And so anything that's going to affect that, for you guys who are watching, this is the kind of thing to be on the lookout for when you're looking at these customers' cars, even if it is for a preventive maintenance, an oil change or tires or whatever.
Exactly.
You know, look for that. And I think it was you that was sharing a story about a customer that you had that had dogs.
Oh,
and
Doreen shaking her head. She remembers that one.
And the hair from the dogs had gotten sucked into the battery compartment and was literally encasing the battery.
Kill the battery.
Kill the battery. So again, this is just one of those things that you keep in the back of your mind when you're considering getting into this kind of work. And I know the other thing I want to point out is, 15 years ago we were telling guys, look at your area market. What's the hybrid market in your area? If you're living in a fairly large metropolitan area or close to a large metropolitan area, odds are there's a pretty good hybrid presence there. I'm sure you could check with the DMV records or other sources to find out. But that was true 15 years ago. I saw an industry report just not too long ago that said that pretty much the next decade, another 10 years, would be the pivotal point for EV vehicles in the United States.
Oh, I believe
so. If you want to position yourself, market yourself to capture that market, I would say now it's not a bad time to do that.
No, you're still in early enough. And by the way, just remember the name of that little charger. It's called Revolt. Revolt. Matt is the guy that you could speak to. He's out of Arizona. A good charger doesn't do it like this. It does it like all the other ones. It does them in series rather than in parallel. So in series, you don't really get as good a charge as this new Vaughn system, but there's a big difference in price.
But like you were pointing out, though, when as old as these units are getting, this is a market. This is money.
This is money
right here.
Well, let's take Carolyn Choquette out of Luscious Garage. She does a whole taxi cab fleet. She's open day and night because she has a taxi cab fleet. She only uses new batteries to rebuild them. Mm-hmm. So she buys like Gen 1 batteries that come 38 in a pack. She reconfigures stuff. The only thing I would caution you there, when you start playing engineer and reconfiguring something, and Carolyn knows what she's doing, but for you, you would have to be very, very careful. And not that you can't learn to do that, but you got to be careful. I don't want to tell people re-engineer something. No. Carolyn's been doing this a long time.
And if you're, and I know we'll get to that later in the presentation, but I'm going to stress it right now. If you have that interest and you haven't taken any kind of formal training, then I would certainly encourage you to do so. Like we were talking about messing with the batteries. Even just replacing the battery pack is something that you need to know what you're doing, both on the safety side and on the actual operational side before you attempt that, let alone start taking these things apart. Yeah. So if you, a good example over at the Max convention, good electrical class, you may be great at DC, AC is a whole different ballgame. All kinds of different rules apply there. So that's all things that if you feel comfortable with what you're doing now, it'll be easy for you to build those skill sets. But again, I can't stress the need for that. And
Pete brings up a good point there, because even just replacing a battery on Hondas, many times when you replace the battery, something like PC1, PC4, no number, CA1, CA4, you got to program it. You don't program it, you're going to have an IMA light, you're going to think you got a bad battery. So there is updated program. Now, I would recommend that you buy a DrewTech M-Box, because you can use the Honda factory software. You can use the GM factory software. You can use the Toyota. They all make hybrids, okay? Currently, you can't do Ford yet with it. I think it's any day that you'll get full access to it. But right now, I'm telling you the ones that at least you can do that have a lot of hybrids on the market. And you can't do the Nissan just yet, but it's getting there. Any questions, Doreen, or we're still good? Okay, so let's move on. So let's look at this Civic problem. And that 1449 was a battery problem. We reconditioned the battery, and again, you only recondition if the battery is too far gone. You cannot recondition it. When we did this, the car is good. She's still driving the car. This is a few years ago, okay? Here's a 1600. So this is an aftermarket scan tool. You always got to do a bulb check, but that IMA light comes on. You got a 1600. You're going to see you could have some issues. Now, This is generic data, and the data was checked with the factory tool, because I do want to show you, sometimes you can get away with using an aftermarket tool. This happens to be OTC, okay? And at the time, when I was doing some beta testing for them, we gave them information back on what was actually good or bad. And notice here, we got some cell voltage here. We got a difference, a little bit of an imbalanced battery. But notice the IMA temperature difference here that I have highlighted, okay? The inverted temperature difference here was an issue, not because it was too high, but the delta, the amount of time it took to reach that temperature. So this goes back, Pete, to a fan problem. You see back here in the squirrel cage? You got to make sure there's nothing stuck in there. Here's a problem right here. This is like that fake cover.
Yeah.
They have the hanging wire that I have right there. We have found more than one car that people put milk crates in or something heavy. It slides over, it hits the connector, either breaks it or it pops it, okay? The fan don't blow, and you know what happens when it doesn't blow? Battery overheats, now you got a problem, okay? Now you got a bad problem. So the only bi-directional control, and OTC happened to have done this, was when you see you got a temperature problem like that, why did it rise so quick? Let me go in to bi-directional and see if the fan has different speeds. This didn't. And then you're going to find the problem. Here, like you were mentioning, the guy with the dog hair, you need to vacuum this. This is the back window of the car. And by the way, if the guy has a Red Sox sweatshirt, well, that needed to go anyway. I'm only kidding. But even if he has a Yankee sweatshirt or a Yankee hat, whatever,
yeah,
you know, you need to lose that stuff because this is the air vent. And by the way, Pete, let's say the air conditioner on a car doesn't work and you live down where you are or in Phoenix, Arizona, where it gets freaking hot. You don't have the air conditioner working in your car. You're only getting ambient temperature going through to cool that battery pack. You're going to have issues.
Yeah.
That battery will not last a normal life as it would, let's say, here in the Northeast, in New York.
Well, I mean, that's become such a serious issue for the manufacturers that there's new technology, new designs coming out on hybrid in the future to handle these issues. I mean, they're going to liquid cooling, where they're running the grid right in the battery pack, and other technologies.
Well, our volts, these guys that are on there, my volt is always, even when it's plugged in, car ain't running. You'll hear, it's circulating.
Yeah.
This car has the air condition, the Ford that we're going to use a little later on. The Ford Escape uses the system's air condition. Even if you want no air condition in the car, that compressor is coming on to cool those 250 D-size cell batteries.
And since we're kind of like, well, I mean, I'm in AC season down in Florida, but not yet up here. This is one of those situations, if you're a hybrid customer and you're driving one of these older cars, it's not a matter of whether you want your AC fixed or not. You don't have much of a choice. It's got to work.
This car, the Ford Escape, will shut down on you if the air conditioner is not working.
Yeah.
Yeah, it will shut right down and you're not going to restart it till it cools.
Yep.
Okay? So clean everything up and then you won't have a problem. So here's a 2008 Honda Civic, and again, now we're back to the factory tool. Problem there was either the wire or the hair or anything blocking it, a sweatshirt, a shirt, a hat. Here we got a 1570. So you can see it says battery individual voltage problem. And I like, you know, the newer Honda stuff, the online, by the way, is phenomenal. Because now when I see this, it gives me wiring diagrams. It goes to the factory info, like ISTA for BMW. It really does a great job. Or Otis, like for Volkswagen Audi. But, you know, Otis, you got to hunt through it. ISTA just brings you everything there. Same with Mercedes, brings you everything there. These guys do the same thing. So here with this, we start looking at it, and older hybrids, when we go 2005 and down, Gen 1 Civic, you don't get this information. Why? They didn't have the smart technology or the PIDs in there. Now notice we have 1 through 11 battery modules. You know what this means, Pete? We have sticks, okay, with 6 batteries in there, 6 D-size batteries that are 1.2 volts each, 7.2 on that battery stick. Well, right away when I see this and I say, you know, we're not up to the 14 because these modules, you see a module, means 2 sticks.
Right.
Well, that's good, but look at this thing. This thing is really a problem. The rest of them are not that great. And notice how it comes up and starts showing us information here.
Yeah, that's
Very,
really good.
very cool if you have the right tool. Now, I bet a lot of you don't have a factory tool, but again, you can get this stuff. You have a J2534. You can go right to the Honda website and just pay for the subscription. I think it's $10 a day.
Yeah, and
We have the yearly, so I don't deal with that.
How it's gotten so much easier to get this kind of technology, and a lot of it goes back to the right to repair stuff. And I think you're going to see more of this based in the cloud.
Yeah, there's a couple
hardware.
of setbacks for us, unfortunately. Chrysler being one of them, where it's very expensive, for my Chrysler software. And GM just announced about 3 weeks ago.
Right.
Now it's per VIN. So if anyone has a subscription, I think if you do it before the end of this month, you won't go by per VIN at least till next year. But I guess they all want to make money. It is their proprietary information.
And it's it's a cost. It's this is not something that I mean. You're a business owner. Your customer ends up paying for it eventually, right?
Exactly.
They have to.
And when a hybrid comes in, I don't want to get what we charge or don't charge.
Right.
But you got to get a couple hours. If you get $150 an hour, let's say, and you're only charging that, how the hell are you going to pay for your equipment? And you just got to tell the people up front, hey, Pete, your car, we want to check everything out, not just put the scan tool on and go, here's the codes, you're done.
Right. But your
That's
hybrid customer, and again, give us your feeling here, but most of the hybrid shop owners that I've talked to, it's a different kind of customer. They bought the car for a reason, and they're whether it's their concern over the environment or doing their part or whatever, and they're also very informed about their car, the hybrid technology, and they understand, what it takes to maintain them. It's not like, the customer that's driving that 89 Ford that's pulling in and giving you a hard time over doing a 1995 oil change. These people, that they understand that if they want their car fixed, they're going to have to pay for it.
And if they don't, if they're a second-hand owner, and you will get some tightwads that don't want to take care of the car. I mean, that's par for the course. But if you explain to them and you go in and see what their miles per gallon is, this is the big thing.
Yeah.
When you get Hondas with problems like this, they're getting like 34 miles a gallon. What the hell are you driving a hybrid for then?
Right.
You're not getting it. You would have been better off buying a Hyundai gas motor, not even their hybrid version, because you'd get 40 miles or 39 miles a gallon.
Right.
So the best way to sell it to them is, look, your vehicle is not getting the miles per gallon it should because your battery has deteriorated. You need to have your battery reconditioned or replaced, and we need to do a full diagnostic check on a car. Yeah. Now, by the way, when you check the car, remember I said about the tires, everything counts. Sticking calipers are big. You know why? Because the brakes don't wear out, they rust out, and if you're not servicing these things, there's where another problem is going to be.
Yeah.
So keep that, in your hat there to make sure you do a proper diagnostic checkout of the car. These new things, these digital inspections. We had Eric Ziegler out here, and he really hit on a lot of that stuff. And we've been taking pictures for years and printing them out. But that's what you have to do, because seeing is believing.
Yeah.
And we do the before and after, and that makes all the difference.
Oh, yeah.
By the way, just like these screenshots, Pete, I always say I get paid multiple times for them because the customer paid me. These are real customers' cars. And I put them in my classes. That's the way to do it. Save your information, give it to the customer. If you charge the right amount, you won't have a problem. Mm-hmm. And if you're doing stuff, we implemented texting in the business. The greatest thing since sliced white bread. Because now we could take a picture, text it over to the dude, and
oh, yeah.
Our business increased quite a bit just with texting. So look at some of the texting services out there. Now, thermal imaging. And I'm going to put a couple of mentions here for thermal images. They're not all created equal. Mm. The ones off your phone, they're a toy. Okay? Nothing against them, but they're not going to have the ability to grab everything that you need. This picture is from a very high resolution one that has an adjustable lens, just like an expensive camera. Mm-hmm. Do you need to spend that? No. One of the ones I would recommend is a VT4. Now, Fluke's not paying me to say this. A VT4 Fluke is an inexpensive thermal camera. Perhaps you remember, you know, when my son and I did a webcast years ago using it, and Craig wrote some articles about it. You could probably get street price $500-600. Very good camera. You could download the pictures and get good resolution.
Yeah.
Okay. You can see the difference here in case you're wondering what's going on. You can see that this battery has an issue right in it. It's way hotter than the others. And you see how it's not getting here to the end? This battery is cooler. Okay. So this whole stick, gone. You need a new stick. Now, yes, Mike Dabrowski, a smart guy, he would laser weld these things, cut them apart, but not as many people are geniuses like Mike. I mean, you know, or have the time Mike has. But most of the time we see these, we got to replace them. So this one, we took a picture from a customer. We had a donor cell that was good. We sell them a donor cell, okay? And nowadays, it's harder for us to even do any of these Honda packs because look at the year.
Yeah, yeah.
It's 2018. That battery was built, I guarantee you, somewhere in 2006. So its life expectancy is pretty much over.
Yeah.
It's over. Okay. So Honda Civic here, IMA malfunction. Another big problem, the 1600 we looked at before, is going to tell you there's some sort of a control issue in the system. Again, always start with the simplest thing, the high voltage battery. Because if you can get in and get what we looked at here, this is exactly where I would want to look. Okay, exactly where I would go.
It's very interesting because this is kind of mirrored to what's going on with the cars in general, with the 12-volt battery size now. It's getting to the point where you have to use the one that the car calls for. You can't vary from that too much anymore. You have to tell the car that you put one in.
That's right. And we did that. We did go look back at our, I think it was battery maintenance or whatever the webcast was.
Yeah, it wasn't too long ago.
Yeah, it wasn't long ago that you have to program these things. Now, you know, on the European side, we've been doing them for years. But now it's in GMs, it's in Fords on their newer cars.
Yeah.
And it's important. I'll give you a good example. Start-stop. Your rent-a-car start-stop. My car's a start-stop. My brand new last year, 2017 X5, the start-stop, my battery went dead. GM had to give me a new battery because of start-stop so many times. And if you don't put the right battery in, I'm sure the battery was defective, okay, because that's not normal. But even BMW, okay, they are switching batteries out way quicker than the normal amount of time. They're not lasting as long. This is why we see, you know, we did a Phaeton that had 2 batteries in the car. You go any high-end car, the reason when they're going to run Mercedes, they're going to run 2, you should always replace the 12-volt batteries at the same time. Don't put one and not the other one.
Right.
They have all the stuff going on. Anyway, getting back to the 1569, this is right from Honda telling you what you got to do to get rid of this code after you fix the problem by replacing the battery. You're going to have to take this blue and yellow wire, it's under the cover, that's why this is pulled back, and you're going to have to cut it. And people go, what do you mean you got to cut it? Yeah. And you're going to have to know what you're doing here. You know, my finger pointing to it doesn't mean you're going to go just in there with your hands, because this thing, even with the battery pack off, it's about 65 volts on one side, even with the switch off. It's enough to kill you. So make sure you know what you're doing before you do something, okay? Any questions so far, Doreen?
No.
Okay, another major problem. Now, Aftermarket Scan Tool did a great job. Here again, OTC. This is the VTEC oil system I was talking about. Now, the VTEC, I can put a lab scope on, as you can see here, the VTEC coming on and off, very important. Because you know what happens when this car is doing regen or this car is on electric? Hondas with IMA don't take off like a Prius, where there's no noise, right? Or even this car. We can do this. My car here, the Escape, will go up to probably 38 miles an hour on electric if you baby the pedal. If you hit the pedal hard, the gas engine will come on. These guys, it doesn't matter what you do, you're never taken off in electric. But when I'm driving down the road, that does happen, okay? And when that happens, I can see either by scan tool or by lab scope if the VTEC system is actually working. That means it is going to prevent, first thing that's going to happen, it's going to shut fuel off. Second thing, spark shuts off. Third thing, we shut the intake valve first. That's what the valve pause system does. And the fourth thing, it shuts the exhaust. So now you have a piston going up and down, squeezing no air. This engine, the ICE, the internal gas combustion engine, never ever shuts off, unlike a Prius, unlike a Nissan, unlike a Ford or any other car. Okay, so that's the difference with this. Okay, so if you didn't use the right oil, simple as an oil change. And believe me, we get a lot of people come in, you know, there's a lot of these big box stores, we'll name them like that. They constantly put the wrong oil in.
Oh, it was interesting you should mention that, because I noticed that on like you mentioned, the rental I have there, I don't know, it's a 17 or 18 Malibu, and it's got an oil change sticker on the upper corner of the windshield, and it says 5W30 right on there. I'm willing to bet it's not a 5W30 car.
I doubt it. I doubt it. Now, the article I just wrote, I don't know what month it's coming out, and I gave it to you, I guess, last month. You know, the timing chain wear and all the oil problems. My God, you know, those problems could be avoided if the right oil was used in those cars. And it's usually, as you can see, we got liquid moly right over there. We have Motul, we got Pennzoil. We use the right oil for the car. If the customer don't want to go for it, I tell them they don't need to bring their car here, because I don't want to put the wrong thing in their car. And good product costs money, just the way it is. So make sure you use the right oil, right weight, and not have a problem. This would be an ILSAC rating. And besides ILSAC, you would need the other specifications that the manufacturer requires. So the VPS 1021, that's the VPS unit. And you have your oil pressure switch, and you have a solenoid right there. That's the VPS. That's where we would take our reading from. The wire's unplugged. And caution, caution, caution. We're not talking about Will Robinson lost in space, but you'll be lost in space if you just put your power probe without indexing and think, oh, it's a solenoid. I'm just going to put power and ground on one side. It'll click. If there's a diode in there, you'll be buying a new one. And a lot of these manufacturers buy this technology from either Siemens, Sachs, or Bosch. And there are diodes in a lot of these things. Even Ford Motor Company, a vehicle right near us, they use some of that technology. Even though it says Ford on it, there's diodes in it. So do not do that without indexing. What's indexing? When I pull the wire off, I have to turn the key off, pull the wire off, turn the key on. Does this have power or does that one have power? Unplugged. Obviously, if I do it when it's plugged, they'll both have it if the coil windings in the solenoid are good, right? So we need to make sure we unplug it. Very, very important. I go over that in all my electric classes and stuff. So the DT may set here after an oil change. The cause is a momentary lack of oil pressure. It'll clear itself. So the best thing here is, if that's happening, I wouldn't be surprised that these people have not changed their oil on a consistent basis, okay? And, you know, you better tell them to even be using the right filter. Now, Kia has a bulletin out. We've just switched over to some Kia filters, and we use wicks on them, okay? They have a bulletin that some of it causes some engine damage in check engine lights and oil consumption. Okay, so you got to be careful. It's not your father's Oldsmobile, as I like to say. And here's the VPS taken apart. Well, here's the screen that usually clogs up when people do not take this. And the gasket's very robust. You can clean the screen out. We do this many times. Gen 1 has one of these. Gen 2 has two of them, okay? Because Gen 1 shuts 3 cylinders off. Gen 2 shuts all the cylinders off. Okay? The little spool valve that's in there, if we can't get the right oil flowing through there, it's never going to get through the little orifices right in the VPS system itself. This is just the VPS solenoid. This goes up to the cylinder head gauge. We want them to fix that. It's imperative that the system knows what's going on and that the consumer knows what's going on, because then they're going to have a problem. I showed you the blown engine we have outside from poor maintenance. Hole in the block, hole through the hybrid air conditioning compressor, hole in the radiator.
2 holes in the block.
Yeah, 2 holes in the block. So, you know, you really have to look at your DTCs and check them carefully. You know, a lot of people, there's great stuff out there, AllData, Mitchell, Motologic, Identifix, Google, YouTube, but you know what? You need to do some research, not just look up something for the quick fix. You got to read about it. and you have to understand it. You know, the famous thing that I like looking at, and it was very easier in the older all-data system, not that it's super hard now, but I guess I'm an old bugger and creature of habit. You can just look in even the new all-data stuff, system description. And then you get an understanding of what that circuit's supposed to do. So if you're not familiar with something, you can look in and see what causes it to operate or not operate.
I want to ask a question about the screen that you got up on the
one
right
before?
here. No, this one right
Oh,
here.
sure.
First, these are all ECM codes.
That's
right?
correct. Yep.
And are you? I'm thinking that since this is ECM, this falls under the OBD2. Are these global OBD2?
This is not global, but this can be picked up global. This wasn't under global.
What caught my eye is the permanent codes there. You know? Because
Yeah, you know what? Maybe it is, but if I recall, we were in Honda. But you could get these. Since these are all generic, your point,
Yeah.
since these are all generic, yes, you can get this in generic OBD2.
well, what I wanted to share with everybody that if you're not aware of it, there are 3 places that you can go looking for codes in OBD2. You know, mode 3, that's the one that whatever code's mature, turn the light on. But if somebody came along and turned it all off again, then you could check mode 7, right? That's going to tell you any codes that haven't clicked that second trip yet, but are waiting in the line. And even if those are gone, you can check mode 10.
And new cars.
In newer cars, in the newer OBD2.
Past 2011.
Yeah, because in mode 10, the only one who can turn that off is the ECM.
The ECM itself, yes.
Right? So if you got a complaint that maybe another shop, you know, it's so common for guys to hook up, read the codes, clear the codes, and then move on. And we always advise don't do that. It's like you always say, that's like putting bleach on a crime scene. You know, don't do that yet.
Don't do that.
But here that wouldn't work because you can always go back and look. You be that detective. Well, maybe there is a clue as to what's causing this customer's problem. Check that mode 10 if it's available on that car.
And you know what? It's a good point you brought up because a lot of the customers that are called the cheapy customers, okay, these guys have their own code reader.
Sure,
They're used to clearing the codes. And if you recall the article with it was on the Ford pickup truck. And it was an odd code, the 2098 and 2096 DTC for a lean condition, not a 171.
Yeah.
That code was in mode 10. It was a great clue to see that someone already erased it. So mode 10 can be quite helpful to you. Take a peek at it. Let's look at these Priuses. We talked about Gen 1, Gen 2, Gen 3 is similar. Gen 4, totally looking different nowadays, okay? So there's a big difference here. This was a throw-together type of vehicle. Did it have some issues? Yeah, they had some early issues there. This has a totally different battery pack, and when these battery packs failed, this was a major problem. You could not get this car started. At the time, there were only 5 special battery chargers, these expensive chargers that we were discussing earlier, that recondition, in the whole US, 1 for Canada.
Wow.
So they had people flying around with them, okay? Ford, like this car right here, this has a built-in battery charger. If this thing runs out, I open my door up. As long as my 12-volt battery is good, I press a little button, I wait 8 minutes, and my high-voltage battery will get energy to restart.
Wow.
Because there's always a reserve, okay? So these guys didn't, that cost them a lot of headaches. It has 38 different battery packs in there, and it's 7.2 volts. There's six cells in there, 1.2. This has 28, so they dropped 10 of them. That's big money difference, isn't it? And that's big weight difference. They put a higher voltage motor. These, the motor generator 1 and 2, different than Honda. Honda IMA only had 1. All new Hondas now, they have 2 motors, okay? So these motors burnt up a lot. What causes the motor to burn up? Yeah, the circulator pump problems. No codes on either one of these till we get to Gen 3 and 4. Unlike Ford, you got a circulator problem, you get a code. So that's a very big difference, okay? This here, a lot of times, bad batteries cause the electric motor to overwork. So think about that. It's like an alternator. You got a weak battery, and heat is the enemy, because electricity produces heat, doesn't it?
Right.
So
Makes
there's an
sense.
issue. Now I'm going to take just a quick break because, Doreen, do we have any questions, comments? We're all good? You guys are all good out there, so then we'll just continue and I'll shut up.
We
Prius.
can't shut up. Then we'll just,
Oh, no, then we will be in trouble. I won't shut up. I'll just keep yakking. A 3101 DTC can be caused by too much oil. This is another problem. You know, if you put too much oil in a car, you can do some damage. And you can see it's right out of all data. There's the bulletin for the car. You know, it tells you that there's an issue. And this is true on Gen 1 and Gen 2. So be very careful that you put the right amount of oil in the vehicle, okay? And it'll tell you with different subcodes. What's a subcode? Now here's another good way to tell if your scan tool is real good. Take your scan tool out, and when you get a DTC, Pete, on a hybrid, there are something called subcodes, just like you see here, 204, 205. Those information codes can help you narrow down the problem. When they're missing, you can't fix that car. You're going to need to have the proper diagnostic tool to do it. And you can see here, it just gives you more things at 1390 and a 1391, giving you an issue. It could be a lot of these things, including sometimes, you know, airflow meter at a fuel, water pump. And another one here, I don't know if I have it in here, but a 3193, I don't think I have it in there, is at a gas. A lot of these people, Gen 1 and 2, Pete, had bladder tanks.
Yep.
A bladder tank, you really need to go to a class, not a seminar, to understand what you need to do to reconfigure or recalibrate the fuel tank, because these things are off big time. So when they're off, what happens, excuse me, is people think they have more gas in there than they do. And they run out of gas, they get the code, put gas in, and when you run out on a Prius, you could only put a small amount of gas at a time in there. Now, you Volt guys know when you need gas, which we only put gas in maybe once or twice a year, if that, but when you need gas, you know what happens. You can't open your fuel door immediately. It goes through a depressurizing process, okay? Now, Prius does not do that. So when you go there and people start full blast on the pump, that bladder tank is in like this, it's not going to work. It's going to keep spitting back. You got to put it in very slowly. This is very true when you run out of gas. You're going to need a minimal of about 5 gallons in there, okay? And you better pour it in very slowly. You may also need the scan tool. In most cases, you will, to clear the DTC before the vehicle would start. All right? Now, they did away with the bladder tank on Gen 3. It was gone, and it's still gone to this day. Okay.
Let's just kind of reiterate what we were talking about earlier, though. I mean, again, it's like you can get bits and pieces through things like we're doing, but if you really want to establish yourself or your shop as the go-to guy in your community for that hybrid repair, then you need more. You need immersive training. You need to take a week, and I know that's tough. I understand that. But that would be an investment if that's what you want to do. And
you know, we're not just saying that because I do hybrid hands-on classes, and it's 3 days, 3 days of hell. 2 days of very tough. And the reason why I do that because I know people can't be gone. You got a travel day in, a travel day out.
Right.
They can't be gone forever. If you're a technician working in a shop, like I'm sure most of you guys are, otherwise you wouldn't even know about the webcast in the first place, you have a lot of the basic information. Now, when you come out, you get the specific information.
Right.
And, you know, what equipment do I need? And you get into all that stuff that we're here from 7:30 in the morning. Sometimes, you know, I tell people a minimal of 8:30 at night on Friday and Saturday, and many times it's 11 o'clock or whatever. Okay, so to get 2 late nights, but I do get you out of here on Sunday, 4 o'clock. You just got to fly home.
And to be fair,
there's other
she's
companies.
a good guy, but you have choices in the marketplace.
There's definitely other companies that do it, no doubt. Okay, so here's Gen 1 Prius. You got to look at all the lights on the dash. A little tough to see here. You have an exclamation point on the car, and you got a battery light on. This particular vehicle still running. Customer lives in New York City. There's the fan on that side. Glass mat battery left side of the car. This is different on Gen 2. Gen 2 is on this side. And there's the big battery. Now, these cells had a problem. First of all, there is a TSB and a recall from Toyota, where they basically knew that the terminal ends would leak on the battery. So if you took this case all apart, if you know what you're doing, you're going to see a whole bunch of gooky stuff. That's glue. They took a glue gun to prevent it. Now, we just had 2 of them come in recently that had a code, an isolation code, and you know what the code's from? And you got to be careful handling the battery case. The acid leaks down and bridges to the metal.
Oh.
Oh yeah, so you got to be real careful with that. You take your meter and you see that puppy's live, you got to be very careful with it, okay? So it bridges to the battery, you know, and we see sulfation on a 12-volt battery,
Sure,
right?
sure.
A lot of people go, oh, no, that can't happen. I go, well, watch this. We'll
Oh,
stay
yeah.
on one terminal and I'll go across your battery, and I'm reading 8 volts. A little more,
Right.
your battery's going down when you read 12 volts.
Right.
So it happens.
Right.
Same thing here. So, you know, they probably are not recalling them in anymore. It's past the time. It's past, you know, 10 years, but it was at the time something you need to look for, okay?
Well, see, we talk about the isolation leakage. I mean, I heard from another person who's very adept in this field. With the way these systems are working now, I forget which model he was talking about, but they were sealed with these, again, the internal cooling systems are sealed with all these little O-rings. Well, come on, they're O-rings. They're going to
They will
fail,
leak.
right? And when they leak, well, now you have that HV isolation code that you have to find. You know what I mean? So again, that just goes back to what we're saying. There's one thing about getting the big picture, but it's another to get the nuances
And
where
that-
you're going to find that stuff.
You bring that up reminds me of our coolant system one.
Yeah.
Because when we're working on a hybrid, we need deionized water,
Yeah.
not distilled. Or you buy the factory premix and save yourself a lot of aggravation. But the reason being for isolation faults like that and the
Yeah.
proper flushing of the system after you fix that particular leak.
Yep.
You know, you got some car manufacturers like Mercedes hybrid, they actually use a separate air conditioning system. And down the road, I think you're going to see a lot of almost like a window air conditioning in the car. It's going to be one type of unit, not connected to all the stuff. As you see with electric pumps, we could have that electric pump anywhere. We don't need a belt to go around a crankshaft pulley or
Right,
anything
right.
else. So that's where it's coming to. Here on this high voltage problem, look at these battery cells. Now, I'm just showing you 13 out of 19. Of course, there's 38. You got to double them. Look, can
Oh,
you
the
see some of
variance is
these?
crazy.
Look at this.
Yeah.
We should be having way higher voltage. What did I say? If a battery, one battery cell, not individual cells in it, but one battery module to make a pack, okay, or to make a module, one battery pack is 2.1 volts per cell, 7.2 for the whole thing. This should be doubled. These should be in the 14. So we have anything in the 14?
No.
Nada.
But I'm looking to the big range. I mean, we got a
Oh,
high
yeah.
of 1136 and a low of 383. that would be no different than if I'm in, like, say if I'm taking a 12-volt battery and doing, and when you could, and I was doing that old voltmeter leads in each cell
That's
pair,
right.
right, to measure the individual cell voltage.
That's
That's
right.
what you're seeing here.
Yeah, and this is all done electronically on your scan tool. This happens to be the common scan tool that works very good on some of the Asian cars. Okay, they're no longer around, but it was a good tool at the time. And again, I try to use a lot of different tools for examples.
Yeah.
You know, of course, we did use the factory tool on this, but the reason why I do that, not everyone owns a factory tool.
Right.
And it gives me the option of going, and the knowledge of knowing, will this tool really work? Does it tell me the real deal? That way I can pass that information along. Questions?
Yeah, what is the nominal voltage of a single lithium-ion cell?
What is the voltage of a single lithium-ion cell? Well, depending on the battery, because not all of these have 6 cells. Now, we get into bigger packs that they use in, let's say, on a Lexus 300H hybrid. That is a 9.2 battery cell, you know, pack. It's a little bit different. So it would depend on the vehicle you're working
Yeah, I
on.
think you're looking at the spec, and then
You gotta
whether,
look at the
because
spec.
like all these are older batteries are all nickel metal hydride.
These are all, right. But you
So-
could get some of these that
But now,
are,
the way the technology is changing.
yeah, they're mostly going to lithium. They still use these. Now, Honda
Yeah.
has Toyota has plug-in and non-plug-in.
Right.
Non-plug-in are not lithium. Lithium costs a hell of a lot more money.
Yeah.
So it depends on your battery. Good question. You can usually find that information in ALLDATA or Mitchell or one of those, or factory info.
Yeah.
It'll be there.
And I would say to all the guys who were saying earlier that they're getting one or two a month, or you're getting exposure to it, even if it's for preventive maintenance. Take the time. The next time you get one in your shop, hook whatever scan tool or tools that you own to it and see just what can you access with that tool.
Exactly.
There are going to be some things that you can do. I mean, I'm sure that, and I'm not 100% sure, but I would assume that because of the age of the batteries, more of these aftermarket tools are going to be providing that kind of information, or some of that information.
It depends. We won't go too deep into that,
right,
other than we do a scan tool shootout in the class, and I make the guys come up to their own conclusion.
Yeah.
If they could really do it. But check it out. It's a good idea to do.
Check it out. But I mean, the bottom line is, if you're going to get into this, like anything else, if you want to be able to do it all, then you're going to have the equipment to do that with.
It's time and money.
Yeah.
You got to spend some time, not only going to classes, but reading, talking to other people.
Yeah.
Okay, not just watching, and of course, the YouTube is phenomenal. Google's great, but there's nothing like doing it. And you really got to get yourself
Well, yeah, and you have to be
into
careful online with just who the so-called expert is. Make sure you vet those people and you know who they are.
So here's a good example of, and maybe Doreen could move in on this. You see all the crust up here?
Yeah.
Well, this is a leaking battery that's going down to the case, and if you look right in there, you'll see some of it.
Yeah, you can see the stain. You can see all down through here.
So it looks pretty bad, and if you look at the copper here, these are called the bus bars. And the problem with the bus bars, when they're looking like the Statue of Liberty, you're not getting voltage through that terminal that charges battery up on regen.
Yeah, that's voltage drop.
It's voltage drop. It's VD. Now, this is not the fix-all VD. This is after you clean everything up.
Yeah.
You got to clean all these bus bars up. And there's a proper way of doing it, not just sanding them down and...
Oh, no whiz wheel?
No whiz wheel on these puppies. These are very thin. By the way, when you start wearing them down, you're going to have a voltage drop anyway. You're not going to have it. So you got to use stable and 22 to make a good connection, clean these up properly with a proper solution, and make sure the nuts are torqued down. The nuts, by the way, cannot be cleaned with any type of solvent or whatever. They will get ruined immediately. Toyota says they would like the nuts replaced, but they won't sell them to you.
Okay.
So we have a bunch of nuts that we keep around from spare donor cells, and a lot of them you got to throw out. They're bad.
Yeah.
The rest we use when we recondition a battery. So this battery we had to take apart, recondition it. Here's when we're done. Look at the difference in the cells, Pete.
Yeah, I mean, they're all up where they need to be, and there's very little variance between them.
And could you guys recognize this tool, the screenshot? This is the Vitronics Toyota factory tool at the time.
Yeah, the old one.
The old one. I still have that. Excuse me. Sorry
that
about
was a
that.
very common problem with the old Priuses, the first Priuses.
And Gen 2s, we've done a lot of them.
Yeah.
Gen 2s are bad. We did a little beta test here where I was paid by a company that actually we rebuilt people's batteries for free. I got paid. The consumer got their batteries done for free. So I even called up, because I only have so many customers and I don't want to give all my customers new batteries for free. Even though I'm getting paid for them, they weren't paying me the price I would get off the customer. But it was good money. Make a long story short, we had a lot of my students, other shop owners, brought cars here, made money on it, and the difference, especially in the Gen 2s, people's mileage dropped so far down, came back up to where the car was like new. Now they were getting more miles per gallon. Now, one of the other things at the Clean Air Conference and IM Solutions that I'm a guest speaker at it all the time, states are very interested in emissions. Now, when that car was certified, there was a big difference in the miles per gallon it got to now. So that means it's running on more gas.
Right.
Its footprint is now, its carbon footprint is a hell of a lot higher than when they said it was.
Sure.
So now states are starting to look at that and say, that may be contributing to more smog in our area, especially states like California.
Yeah, well, that makes sense. I mean, if you had the old IM inspection procedures for a gas car,
Yeah.
right? Yeah,
Yeah.
that makes sense.
You can see the difference here. We'd like to be in the 14, 15 range. You don't want one way out. The big thing here is balancing the battery pack.
Right.
Now, we're going to look at that a little later on this Ford, because Ford got smart. They put it in their software, unlike the other car companies. And if you could balance the pack with your scan tool, okay, then you can make money and you save your customer's battery in the long run. Okay? So here is a Prius problem with a 3000, a 3106, a 3120, but look at the subcodes, a 3125, and there are things from battery malfunction, ECM communication, a energy balance malfunction, transactional malfunction, resolver malfunction, generator problem. Holy schmoly, you need a new car.
Yeah.
This looks like it's going to be expensive. And here is the factory information here, courtesy of ALLDATA, but it's really Toyota's info. And you look at it, we could go in and see what it is. It says it's a high voltage battery, high voltage fuse, coolant system, power cable, wire harness, ECM. You know, all these codes here, what could the problem be? Well, there could be multiple things here. One of these that came in with this stuff right here, like this car, you know what the problem was? 12-volt battery.
Yeah.
The basics. Okay. Another one that came in with a few more codes than this, the motor generator was bad. And another one, the motor generator and the inverter and the battery were bad on the car.
Wow.
Okay. And that was from some idiot power washing the motor down. Water got into the inverter, shorted the inverter converter and the electric motor and killed the battery. Okay, so be very, very careful when you're working with these things. Do not put any liquid anywhere it shouldn't be. You only should wipe something down and caution where your hands go. You know, as these cars get old, oil, the wiring harnesses get ruined. This car behind you has a new wiring harness in it. That wiring harness goes from the back of the car to the front of the car.
Wow.
This had an isolation problem, okay? So when you're looking at oil leaks, tranny leaks, power steering leaks, any freaking leak on a car, you do not want it on a hybrid. Because if oil gets into that cable on the insulation, it's going to ruin it. You're going to have an issue.
Yeah,
okay?
Sure.
And
I've also seen that oil wick through the harness.
Oh, yeah. And, you know, it's, people think, well, just spray a little brake clean on it. What's brake clean going to do, too? It's going to start breaking down that insulation. You know, this is a little different, guys, a little different. Here's a Gen 2 Prius. There's the 3193, ran out of gas. A big problem here. Now, if that happens, the first thing you want to do when this is out, besides put gas in the car, clear the code out, restart it, what do you think we want to do? We want to sell them, Pete, a recalibration. You don't do this for free. You get paid for it. Where can you find the information out? Can your scan tool actually perform this? This is one of the exercises we do in a hands-on class, because some of these things are very finicky. It's like, how do I do a compression test on a Prius? The Prius spins over at about 1,200, 1,500 RPMs. Well, how do I put my compression gauge in there when it should be somewhere at, you know, 2 to 4, right?
Yeah,
at the most, right? 400. How do I do that? Well, that's a function through your scan tool. And not all scan tools perform it. How do I know? When we do the scan tool shootout, we take every brand. I'm not going to get into names. A lot of them don't work right. And that'll give you a false reading on the engine side. So I would sell the customer a calibration here when you have a 3193, because maybe they're not the nut job. There's a lot of nut jobs out there that will keep trying to go to see how many gallons they can get running. And what would happen, the early ones would go into the battery deeper and deeper. And what would happen is the battery pack only goes down to 40% before it would shut the car off. They would let it go lower, and then they were having warranty issues with the batteries. So what did they do? They wrote new software and went, we're going to stop this at a certain amount. Usually somewhere high 30s, 40%, they're going to shut them down. And you can't blame Toyota or any car company for that matter. These batteries should not be drained down. That's why they have a discharge and charge cycle.
Sure.
And like anything, like your power tools that are electric, your lab scopes and stuff, it can only have so many charge and discharge cycles. Okay? Any questions, Dorian? All right, so we're moving along. Here is the health check. Now, the Toyota Tech Stream, in my opinion, not only is Toyota a phenomenal company, but they were the first. My buddy Mark Saxenberg, now retired from Toyota, I thought he was a big BS artist years back at the World Congress for SAE when he said that Toyota was going to give the aftermarket information, their scan tool, everything. I was like, you're a big BS artist when he was done. I didn't say that in front of everyone. And Mark said, no, no, you will see, we're going to do this. And he was true on his word. Toyota North America did a great job. The leading company, till this day, you can still get, for I believe 55 bucks, you can get the full factory scan tool. Okay, and by the way, if you don't have an LSID, locksmith or security professional, as they like to say now, if you don't have that clearance, you put a different computer in, you're not going to be able to start the car because of security issues. But if you have that, you can do everything, and you get all the factory information from Scion, Toyota, and Lexus, and Identifix. They work to deal with Identifix to give you problems on a car.
Yeah, that was very interesting how they did that.
And this I love. You know why? This does the whole health check, and many other scan tools are doing this nowadays, but it tells me what DTCs I have in here, and if I...
That's a big key right there.
See this? Cha-ching.
Yeah.
Now, I'm not just going to program the car. This is telling me it needs an update. When I click this, I now go online. I get a PDF that tells me if it has this symptom, yada, 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 do this and that. Like if it was on a Camry, I got to do a special thing that I didn't know when I had the mask attack. I didn't RTFB, I guess, all their information, or they didn't have it there.
Yeah.
But when you have this tool, they kind of force you to read it. It pops up. I mean, you could probably not read it, but I like going through, reading it real quick. And it said, take out a 20 amp fuse. I was like, holy crap. Or you can damage a brick in ECM or PCM.
Oh, yeah.
And I was like, whoa, who knew that?
Yeah.
I'm a lucky guy. I did a lot for my mask attack, and I just lucked out, I guess. So here is an opportunity to make some money. Besides, look at what DTCs you have, current, pending, history. And again, this went right to a customer, 2007 Prius, and we made money off it. That's the name of the game. And these guys do a very nice job when you do click on something to give you the freeze frame and the code information, when it happened, what frame. Very well thought out. Tom Tisdale used to head the project. I'm not sure what Tom is working on now. I think there's someone else on the scan tool.
Yeah.
But they do a great job. I can't say enough about it. Reasonably priced. I think the year is 900 or 1,000 bucks. How can you go wrong? Great tool to have in your shop, guys. And here with a P0A0D, high voltage circuit high. Now, what do you think high voltage circuit high? And years ago, they didn't give you this information, okay? The interlock. You know what that means? This is the power switch in the back, or the turn-off key, or, you know, whatever you want to call it, the interlock. This is a big problem. I've had people that are sharp techs call me up saying, I can't get the car started. And I said, well, all you need to do is make sure that the safety lock is in place. And they go, no, no, it's in place. And I said, do me a favor. Take it out and put it back in. It has to make a special click. If you look at that when you take it out, underneath has two little pins. That's not for high voltage. That's a 5-volt circuit. And if it doesn't see that all the way in, when you see something system voltage high or high voltage circuit interlock high, you know what that's telling you? It's anytime. Open, I don't care if it's a TPS. I got an open.
Yeah.
If I see system voltage short, low, I got it.
Yeah, I always have to think about that even after all these years.
You know, I keep throwing that out in every class that I do, because once you have that in your mantra, in your brain, you're going, okay, I know I got to look for an open. You got to be an open.
Yeah.
The voltage is high, higher than expected. So this is a big problem here, and you can see if you go into their sub information, it will give you information, the time of the cycle, you know, was it idling, whatever the case may be. Oh, another thing reminds me now. Gen 1 Prius, you want to write this down. Gen 1 Prius, if you leave the key on in the on position, that wasn't a button, it was a key. You leave it on, there was an issue with the battery draining down, the high voltage battery. So you did not want to leave the car in neutral with the key on, you would drain the battery down.
Oh.
So be careful, there's probably an update on it.
I got one now, because that just popped into mind. Not related to hybrids, guys, but I know a lot of you dealing with the parasitic drain problems, and we've done a lot about that too, about doing the voltage drop exhausted fuses and checking for control modules that don't go to sleep. Well, here's another one you might want to keep in mind for that one you haven't solved. I just heard about this the other day. The customer kept coming in with a complaint that the battery would go dead after a day or two sitting in his garage. It took some query, but what they found out was he was leaving his smart key hanging on a key hook in the garage. So it was always constantly communicating with the car. It would never go to sleep. So
It's
there
bad.
you go, guys. If it's one of those little push button cars that everybody is nowadays, and you're solving that
Now,
parasitic
funny you
drain
say
problem,
that.
check that out.
Do you know what happened to me one morning? I went out running to meet my friend, and I was driving my Corvette. I had to go in through the trunk because my key fob battery was dead. Do you know why? You know where I park it, and my
Yeah.
fob was close.
It
It
was
was
in
doing the
range,
same
right?
thing. It just killed the fob.
Yeah.
So, yeah, you got to be careful. Be careful with fobs, even with programming. Sometimes you only want one key around, the other key better be away from it. You don't
Yeah.
want any interference.
See how many tips you guys get from coming to our webinars?
Exactly.
More
The
than you can
brains just keep going. Here's just a whole bunch of other codes here. Steering angle sensor. Very important to make sure your tool does it right. I'll give you a true story here. I'm not going to say what aftermarket brand company, but it was when I had a Lexus and the steering angle sensor needed to be done, so we did it during the class. The freaking steering wheel, I could not get it straight. Lucky I had the factory tool. This aftermarket tool kept doing it wrong. It said it was right. And this is the danger sometimes of believing it. Now, one story I have at some point, a European story for you, was another one that kicked my guy's ass recently. They were looking at 3 very fine scan tools. Top names, I won't get into the names. Top names kept saying it calibrated the ABS, what's that, anti-skid, whatever. They had a couple other names for it. That
traction.
Mercedes, traction control, right. Wouldn't do it. I had to come in here on a Saturday, use the Mercedes tool. In like 15 minutes, I was done. It calibrated it, no problem. It was driving them crazy. Kept telling them. Then you looked at the code it was coming up with. Oh, you have some fault. You need to replace something else. Got to be careful. You know, the scan tool, I always like saying, is the biggest lying tool because even with substituted values sometimes. But what's really bad is when you get something that you trust and it's the only tool you have in your shop and you think it did the job because it said completed, you got to be careful. I'd recommend more than one scan tool in your shop. And if you could afford a factory tool, you know, again, with J2534, buy a DrewTech M-Box, you're ready to rock and roll, and you just buy the subscription.
Right.
You know, the thing is, I think we're creatures of habit, where we like picking up some hardware that you turn on and it kind of communicates with it. We got to be careful.
Yeah, and there's a few lessons learned too about going to the 2534 platform.
Oh, no doubt.
You know, and I know you've written about this for us, and there's information online about it, just for who plays nice on the same computer. You know, you can't put every manufacturer on one laptop.
Honda and Ford will kill you.
Right. So I mean, there's a lot more, guys. There's a lot more to that.
Yeah.
But what G's point there, I mean, you have to take a look at look at your customer records. What are you servicing the most of? You know, is it or Toyota products a big line that you're dealing with? Like you said, Toyota is probably one of the most
biggest.
friendly ones to get started with, and not that costly to get quite the support. Just a bit tidbit for you, trivia of why they went and give you the deal with Identifix. You know, these are dealer level tools, and when the dealers have a problem with a brand new car, they can call the factory hotline, and they're talking to some guy on the hotline to help them figure out what's wrong with this car. But the guys on the hotline, these are the new engineers who just started working at Toyota yesterday, and this is like their first gig, and they know about a year or two old, but they're not going to help you answer a question on a 2010, right?
Those are long gone.
They have no clue. So Toyota, in order to help us, the aftermarket, have that kind of support, they made that part of their package. So okay, if you have a problem with an older Toyota, we know our hotline's not going to help you. This one can, you know. So that's why they made that deal.
Yeah.
But that's a nice place to start.
And you know, it's very good. It's funny you bring that up. When I do a reprogramming class that's hands-on,
Yeah.
the car company I do first is Toyota. Okay. Now, the only thing I would have to say about Toyota, if you're not computer literate and you're not careful reading all the screens, to go for the $55 the first time you put it on your computer is going to be a little bit of a pain in the butt. Of course, you may not have the right JavaScript, you may not have the right PDF reader,
Right.
whatever. So that's a little bit of a hassle. If some of you guys said you're going to be at Vision, one of the classes I'm teaching is a reprogramming class. It's not a class, it's just a seminar, but I'll give you a lot of tidbits in that that is really super helpful. Because like you said, it's not really just plug and play. It is once you got it down. Once you got it down, it's cake.
Right.
You know?
And then let's interject this too. If you're not familiar with the National Automotive Service Task Force, that's kind of the group that is the liaison between us and them, to put it simply.
The OEs.
Right? It's nastf.org, okay? So first thing I'm going to tell you guys is go to the website and join. It costs nothing to be a member, but the more people they have, more members they have, the bigger a push they can make on the OE side, okay?
No doubt.
If any of you guys are HD guys, probably not, but they're now pushing on that side of the market to help those guys get the information they need, right? The heavy duty market. And the second part is, if you go to the NASTF website, you can get a link to just about every factory OEM website that you could want, and you can go to those sites, and it doesn't cost you anything to look up what are the requirements for your laptop for that manufacturer. You know what I mean?
Good.
And you can take a look at that.
Good example there. You want to get the SDD, which is the Jaguar Land Rover Range Rover tool. You go to requirements there, it's a 32-bit computer.
Yeah.
So you're going to have your computer configured by your local computer guru dude, unless you're handy yourself.
Right.
So those are some of the things that you need to kind of know. If you put it on a 64-bit, it'll install, but it won't work.
And the LSID that G was mentioning earlier, all the information about that, how that works, how to get it, is also at NASTF.
Yeah, there's good stuff there. So back to this, the different DTCs here. Well, here was one. This Camry came in, and first of all, let me explain that Camry, Toyota, is one of the companies, similar to what I wrote in the oil article that's coming up. They're one of the companies that will give you a brand new engine, believe it or not, okay, because of oil consumption.
Wow.
You have to meet the different requirements, but it's not that hard. They have a procedure to check the oil using the right stuff. You go back to the dealer, and if the dealer seems fit, and they've been very generous on their hybrid vehicles. They've been giving people new motors without a problem.
Wow.
This guy got a new motor. Unfortunately, he didn't do it through the dealer. He got paid the full amount, but he got it done from another repair shop. This car had a couple 100,000 miles on it, believe it or not. So it came in, one of the things here, solar sensor. Write down that solar sensors are going to be a normal code. You know why they're going to be a normal code? When you pull it in your shop, the fluorescent lights like we have in here, sun load sensors don't like it. If you do it outside, so I always tell people, don't worry about them. Check it outside. If it bothers you, no big deal. Yeah. But if we look at a main, you know, those are main body codes. But how about other DTCs? So we look at this, and we got a U0293, lost communication with the high voltage computer. Okay. So lost communication with the high voltage module is set when communication with a hybrid vehicle control ECU is interrupted. Possible causes: wire harness, hybrid vehicle, or the ECU. On this vehicle, none of the above were the problems. It said this. These are the actual codes that came up, as you see here. I don't make the screen up. This I just blocked the box in. This is the actual screen for this car. A P2281P, system malfunction. Cable information, CAN information between main body ECU and shift interlock control ECU are inconsistent. Possible causes: shift lock control, ECU, wire and harness, or connector. And by the way, this goes a lot deeper. This is the main premise of the code. It's the main information. Of course, you would have to read more into it. And here, the freeze frame, a 3190, poor engine power. Following can cause DTC. Communication, high voltage ECU is normal. The engine RPM is a fixed value. Engine start mode is not active. Target torque is a fixed value. Ratio of estimated torque against target torque is less than 20%. Air induction system or throttle body problem. Whew. And by the way, you see how they give you their frames? This is freeze frame data. They do a great job. Great job. Following can still cause it: fuel pressure, engine, mass airflow sensor, add of fuel, engine coolant, temperature sensor, crankshaft or camshaft, hybrid vehicle control ECU. You need a new freaking car, okay? Abnormal signal from the ECM, possible causes, hybrid or the ECU or ECM, failure to start. Now, this is all these codes from this one car. You're not going to believe, you know, when I always go back to the basics, watch what the problem is. See the fail to start? You know what I'm doing here? I'm in, if you can zoom in on that a little bit, I am in the air-fuel ratio sensors out of the car, and I have 1.25 pounds at idle back pressure.
Wow.
You can't get 5 pounds of dew at a 1 pound bag, by the way. Now, be careful, caution, caution, caution. I'm not going to mention the tool company, but a major tool company, I have one of their back pressure gauges, and it tells you 1.5 pounds at idle is normal. I have to say a big BS to that. At idle, you should have 0. If you got a good catalytic converter, you ain't getting any back pressure. If you start getting more than 0.5 pound at idle, you got a problem. Okay? If you race it up, obviously, you'll get some back pressure. But all the cats that are on a car, and this is why, you know, FRC cars, freaking race cars, people go, I'm going to pull the cat off. If your cat's clogged because you're running rich as a bitch, okay, then you're going to have a problem. But if your car is running correctly and you didn't clog the cat up, that cat should stay on the car and not have a problem and be replaced with a correct cat. Question, comment.
Is there a factory scan tool software available to aftermarket world for VW or Audi?
Is there an aftermarket scan tool available for Audi, Volkswagen? Yes. Now, there are 2 things I'd recommend for that. Kurt would love me to say this, and Bobby G. I have the Otis. It's a phenomenal tool. It's the only tool that you're going to use to actually replace a module. Now, I'm going to give what dealers use. If you don't have to program and you don't want to go through a big learning curve, I should say, you want to buy the Rostec stuff. The Rostec scan tool is, you go into a dealership, you'll see guys have that.
Yeah,
and
good.
we have our Rostec on the same laptop that we have our Otis on, the Volkswagen and Audi factory tool. Now, the reason being is Otis is good, but it's very difficult for most people to use. And that being said, once you get used to it, it's not as hard like anything. But we're so used to the way everything else works, the Germans don't operate that way.
Yeah.
It's like if I want to program and I want to do a health check and go to program like these guys, I can't do that on that tool. I got to back out. And backing out ain't easy. If I have a code, it's going to put me through guided diagnostics, step by step, that you must do. You need the XYZ German tool that you don't have. And then they're going to ask you what that is. Now, sometimes it's just a meter, and it's maybe their factory name. I usually never pick guided diagnostics because I can't get the hell out of the thing.
Yeah, but das ist was we Germans,
Yeah,
we
yes.
Germans do that.
So you guys know that.
Yeah.
For me,
Yeah.
I'm just an American dummy. I need to know how things operate, and I'm going to go my way with it. And, you know, most aftermarket guys think out of the box. We use amp clamps. We use lab scopes. We do thermal images, different things. It's a good tool. I would recommend, and by the way, you could only buy that for the year. $750 for Volkswagen, $70 for Audi. Great tool to have. Rostec, they will be at our big event, by the way. Rostec, I think maybe $500 or $700. Very inexpensive.
Yeah.
Free
And they have good
updates.
support.
The support is killer.
Yeah.
You know, Uwe, who made the tool, the guy is a genius putting this thing together. Easy to use. The tech support is second to none. And also, go check out their wiki, okay? So if you go to Ross Wiki, it'll tell you stuff about Volkswagen, Audi that
Oh, yeah.
you didn't even know existed.
Yeah, very good.
And it's free, by the way. So go check those guys out. Great job. Any other questions, Doreen, before we move on? Okay, so this is too much back pressure. Look at the catalytic converter.
Yep.
Took this when it cooled down with my video scope, okay? Now, the reason why I say cool down, well, one of my guys ruined one of our video scopes, went into a hot cylinder, and the fibers didn't like it too much in the camera. We had blurries.
Yeah.
So we don't do that
up
anymore.
to 4 PSI when cranked. That was a dead
Yeah.
giveaway.
So right here, bounced up to 4 PSI when you crank it over.
Yeah.
The catalytic converter on the car was not replaced, and this has 2 catalytic converters, okay? The vehicle had a new front cat, but not the secondary cat.
Yeah. And you could catch that with the in-cylinder pressure test.
Oh, in-cylinder pressure transducer, but
Yeah.
you know, we don't need to take the artillery out if
Right.
the BB gun will do it.
Right.
You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, very good.
So I like doing stuff simple, and this is why,
Very quick.
you know, it's quick, it's easy, comes right out of your box. That snap-on, this is an old fuel pump gauge
Yeah.
and vacuum
Yeah,
gauge,
yeah.
okay, on both sides of it to tell me back pressure. I like using this better than the other brand I mentioned that's special just for back
Right.
pressure, okay? So you need to, once again, look back, and the basics, all those codes, gone, all because of this.
Yeah.
No lie.
That's amazing, isn't it?
Okay. So sometimes you think, oh my God, this problem is unbelievable. You're going to be going crazy. Don't go crazy. You know, a good friend of mine, John Anello, Auto Tech on Wheels, called me out. I don't think I have that car in here, but he called me out on a Camry hybrid. I may or may not. And let's see if I do. No, I don't. He called me out on his car to Newark, New Jersey. He was back there 3 times. And John is a sharp tech. He does 10 cars a day. The other day he called me up. I think he did 12 cars in one day. That's a hell of a lot to go around. Anyway, he calls me out. He goes, you got to help me. So I drive out there. I take a look at this car. And it did take a bad hit. It was in an accident. It was at a body shop. It looked like the cables may have been compromised. So John has his gloves on, his boots. He has a scan tool out. I talked to the owner, the body shop owner. Now, whether he's BSing me or whether the first responders did this, someone had lifted up the interlock switch. It was up just a bit, is why they couldn't get this car started. And it had other codes that were going crazy. I said, John, stop everything. I got my gloves. I went, start it. Now, John didn't realize at the time, and this is God's honest truth, John even had someone in his boot camp at the time, a guy traveling with him. John got in the car, and because the battery had enough voltage in it, he didn't realize the ready light on this is white on a Camry. He didn't realize it starts getting out. He came that close to hitting his Hummer at the time. I said, John, get in there, hit the brake. And here's a smart guy, okay? Here's a real smart guy. But we all make mistakes. I've made mistakes.
Yeah.
You'll make mistakes. We don't want costly mistakes.
Right.
That's why we put on these simulcasts or webcasts, and why you go for training, so you don't make the same mistake. So back to the basics. Now let's talk about the Ford, and we have a Ford behind us that we're going to look at scan data in a minute. These things, whether it be a Mercury or even a Mazda, these are pretty robust. My buddy John Thornton has one with over 300 and something thousand miles on his. Mine is a baby. It only has 100 and something. Great vehicle. My son Corey drove it for a real long time while his car was in the body shop. And this thing has a couple of quirks about it. And what do I mean about a couple of quirks? One thing is, do you realize when you do the brakes on this vehicle, and you should be aware that Tevis, that's the brake system they use on his car, and sometimes I heard it once tonight when we were standing here, the brakes actually make a noise. They're actuating on their own power without anyone in the car.
Yeah.
With the key off, it can do it. There is a procedure that you need to do, and that's why the brakes will pressurize unexpectedly. Now, here's what I have to say. Not all scan tools will this work on, but I'm going to give you, for safety reasons, there is a manual procedure. This happens to be the IDS that we'll use in a minute, but there is a safety procedure that you can do all by yourself. You know, when you look at brake hoses, they got about 5,000 PSI bursting pressure. And you look out pounds per square inch, what brake fluid would come through. God forbid your fingers got stuck in that caliper. There is caution on this. Now, Ford says they've had no one electrocuted, but they've had people that had their fingers crushed by not following the safety rules. Now, I will warn you, many European cars use Tevis as well.
Yeah.
It's a European company. Their procedure would be a little different, but it would do the same exact thing. This is a pressurization of the system for a safety check on its own. It has nothing to do with nothing other than that. So service brake mode, SBSM, is done this way. Put the vehicle in park with the ignition on, step on the brake pedal with the foot on the brake, turn the key off and on 3 times, then release the brake pedal, and it got to be done in 3 seconds. So this is one when we see someone's coordinated or not in a class, because it will take you a few times. If you don't get it, you have to make sure you get it. And how do you know you get it? If it was done properly, the brake warning light, the red light, will flash as stored hydraulic pressure is released. It will remain illuminated once the pressure is fully released. So now the light is fully on, not flashing, right? And the brake light will flash if the brakes are applied. If you touch the brake pedal, if the battery voltage goes down, you got to leave the key on. You got to put a jumper pack or a battery maintainer like we have on this car so you don't have an issue. So when you're doing brakes on these, you need to follow that procedure or use the factory tool. A lot of guys do have the IDS, another very reasonable price tool. You know, the one we have right here. This is the VCM2. My original VCM went bye-bye, and I had to buy this about a year or so ago. Because we do enough Fords, we need the factory tool. It's a very good tool to have. And their software is made by Teradyne, a very nice software. It gives you relative compression.
Yeah.
1, 2, 3, gives you a lot of good things.
There.
And I'm going to show you something you need to check your scan tool when you get one of these in. It will balance the battery for you where you can make money. So we'll go take a peek at that in just a little bit. So service brake mode, how do you get at it after brake work is done? You could do anything. Step on the brake, turn the wheel, turn the ignition off. Any of that will get you out of service brake mode. Never ever release the car until everything goes back to normal. There is their master cylinder. There's all the electronics here. And you go to the right side of the car, there's even more stuff on there, and you will hear a bunch of noise on this system. So you got to follow precautions. We should say also, I'll throw a tidbit in here while I'm thinking and speaking of brakes. If you're on a Gen 2 Prius, that has 12-volt capacitors, no power booster. And those 12-volt capacitors in the back give you about 3 full brake stops, okay, without the engine operating or power going to it. Now, that procedure, if you go in to bleed it or do anything with the brakes, I've seen guys in classes with aftermarket scan tools, besides other cars be towed here, go in and try to bleed the brakes or do something. And remember, brakes last a long time. Can't do it correctly without the factory tool in many cases.
Yeah.
So you better know what you're looking at.
Yeah. Side note too, guys, when you're dealing with these systems and you're working on these high voltage systems, don't forget that the capacitors in the system, they have to be drained off. You know, it's like the old days when we had the condensers, points, ignition. We used to charge them up and toss them at one another for fun. You're not doing that. You're not doing it with one of these.
No.
But
and even though that's a 12-volt pack, there's enough in there to give you a good tingle, a real good one. And you got to make sure they're good. Now, the other problem on those is a lot of water leaks on some of the Priuses.
Yeah.
Okay, even my Prius, I had to fix a water leak. Going back there, you have seal issues and window issues on a lot of them. So make sure there's no water leaking back there, because if you ruin that, it's not a cheap part. Okay, it's expensive. Oop. Okay, so we're going to leave this Lexus for a minute. We're going to stay. I'm going to switch over to the Ford. I'm going to ask Pete to turn the key on the Ford, and I'm going to switch over to the IDS. And any questions, Doreen? All right, so one of the things you want to do.
Here, there's brakes pressurizing now.
Yeah, the brakes just did a test. We're going to go back into Toolbox. And one of the things here, we got self-test. Pete will point to my little arrow.
Yep.
Got to keep my hand back here to do this right. Hit my tick. And here's the first thing you want to do. All CMDTCs. Oop. And I'll just hit the tick again or the enter key, and many times that'll work. And now we're running through everything that is on the vehicle. So it takes a few seconds here as it's going to go through and query all the computers. And you notice we have all the passes here for all the different systems. The other nice thing about Ford, if you don't know what a FICM is, if you click on it, it says, oop, if you click on it, it says front control interface module, okay? If you click on GEM, general electronics module, smart junction block. So it's pretty nice, and if we scroll down, we're only gonna have one thing with a code and a P1000. You know what that is, gentlemen? That's after all codes have been cleared. That means the monitors on this vehicle did not run. They have to meet a certain criteria to make sure. So that code is not really a code. Now, if we look into data, we could look at, let me go back here. We can look at fuel data, ignition, you can do a power balance test, engine checks, excuse me. So you can do a cranking test. We're gonna hit exit here just to get out. Excuse me. And we're gonna scroll back up here. Screen resolution with that big monitor that's making life a little more difficult for me. So we go into data logger, we can go into engine. Excuse me. And now we'll get engine data coming up. Sorry about that. It comes up with a bunch of boxes that you could select more or less PIDs than you want. The highlighted gray ones here are the ones that they recommend you look at, but you're not limited to that. Helps if I press the right key. There we go. So the one DTC that should come up here, that's for the monitors not being ready. It gives us the engine control information. And that's just some of it. Notice sync. Sync no. You know what sync is? Sync is important between cam and crank. And cam and crank sync on this vehicle is done as you're driving down the road. Unlike some of the GMs, like on a six-banger, the older ones, the brake, e-brake is on, hold the pedal down, fuel cutout, 5,150 RPMs, you hear then it goes sync. This is a little different. This is like most car manufacturers that GM did switch over to on the newer models. Hit data log here, go to battery module. And in the battery module, there we go. We're going to have information here. The state of charge, if I pick that, we'll just hit check. So now here we're going to see average state of charge is 66%. Pack status, okay. That's important. If it told me pack status wasn't okay, I'm going to need to do something about that. No counts. High voltage vehicle stacks is good. Maximum state of charge, 87.95, and there's no faults.
I'm curious, because when we're talking to like the 12-volt conventional gas-powered charging battery systems, we talk about state of charge all the time, and we talk about you have to have a minimum of 12.4 in order to proceed. Even that's a 75% state of charge. So here we're saying the average charge is 66.96%, but because we're looking at a nickel metal hydride battery, a high voltage battery pack, its normal operating range, right, is between what, 40% and 85%.
Very good. And you notice here, you see the high is 88.95%.
Yeah. So average, this average state of charge of 67% roughly does not indicate a problem. That's something that would be considered in that normal operating range for that battery, right?
That is correct. And let's look down at some of the data here. So current, you see this battery state of charge right now?
Yeah.
20-something discharge. Now here is something learned. Battery integrity. So when I look at this ohm resistance, there's an article, I got stuff ready for an article that I haven't actually finished writing. But for this particular car, remember I told you the wire and harness had to be changed?
Yeah.
Well, I can show you before and afters so you know what a good reading and a bad reading is. I had to use my meg ohm meter to actually see that the wiring was not good and replace it.
Yeah.
Okay.
So I was thinking this 394 kiloohm is kind of like an isolation reading, or?
Very good. It's an isolation. Excuse me. It's an isolation reading. I got a tickle in my throat.
Yeah, I hear that. Yeah.
Thank God Doreen gave me a lozenge. I'm sorry. Excuse me.
And then those guys, look at it, if you can see that, the voltage pack voltage, 338 volts. That will definitely knock your socks off.
Yes, because of the amount of 200, excuse me, of 250 D-size cell batteries, we should be somewhere between 300, 330, but depending on the pack. So our pack here, 338, we're a little higher. It's like a surface charge.
Yeah.
That's fine.
Yeah.
There's not a problem with this battery. But there is something we can do. Excuse me. There is something we can do with this. I apologize. You see R mode? R mode, sorry. See rebalance?
I would have never guessed what R mode meant.
Well,
rebalance.
That's why you need a class. So rebalance, if I hit the enter key, now I'm not going to do this because the whole procedure, but I just want to show you. This procedure makes sure that all the battery cells have approximately the same state of charge. This may take 20 to 45 minutes to complete. Do you want to do it? Yes or no? Now, unless you got a little brain damage, mommy dropped you on your head when you were younger, you're not giving this thing away for free.
Yeah.
Okay? Because you got to pay for your subscription, yada, yada, yada. You know, you got to make money. This is something that you're going to figure is going to take you another 45 minutes, charge accordingly. So when we get one of these come in, we do a rebalance mode. What this is doing is taking those 250 D-size cell batteries and making the charge even in the pack.
Yeah.
Now this pack is cooled by air conditioning. It has that vent right in the back window, but it also has a whole air conditioning unit, an expansion valve, the whole bit in the back. This pack, I have not seen any of these go bad with the exception. The one I use where someone pressure washed it, water went in the back, a little bit of a smoke show, okay? Accident hitting it in the back because you got about 2 to 3 fingers from the back where the bumper goes to where it hits the battery pack. These battery packs, about 10 grand.
Wow.
So they're very expensive. Ford ate a lot of money on these. The battery manufacturer, Sanyo, could not supply them with enough batteries. They were actually going to being sold to Honda at the time, which they were more loyal to Honda. This is why Ford decided to start building and using different manufacturers on their newer vehicles. But they could not make these, so they made cases, took the old battery stuff out and had some cores out there going around rather than 10 grand. They lost money. They said the body shop could have them for maybe 2-3 grand, which was pretty nice of them to keep the cars on the road. Question?
Yeah. How can you tell the difference between a sense circuit fault and an actual weak cell in a high voltage battery?
So to repeat that, Pete?
How can you tell between a sensor circuit fault and an actual, was it variance?
Weak cell.
Yeah,
in a
an
high
actual
voltage
weak cell.
battery?
The only real way that you can see the difference, now a sensor, they don't have a sensor. Let's take the 28 pack cell on Toyota. They do not have a sensor for every cell. They pack them up, and if you look under there, there's only so many wires going to them, and it's a calculation, okay? So many times you're really not gonna see it. If you got a sensor failure, you're gonna see probably a whole bunch of batteries at a range. If you got a cell issue, the best way that you're gonna see that is scan data may put you in that ballpark. I would say start there like we looked at before.
Yeah.
But what we do when we recondition a battery, we actually go on each cell. That machine that's right behind me, the wires that you seen earlier, we could see exactly what each cell has. A lot of times they become sulfated or something internally happens to the battery.
Right.
And that's where you're going to have an issue.
Yeah, and you could probably.
So I think that's where he's going with that question with the sensor thing, I assume.
And I would think too that a lot of these newer systems, if they're being individually monitored because of the leaps they've made in technologies, there would be other related codes to a sensor issue. You know, some type of circuit-related issue, or like you were pointing out, you'd have to go
circuit high, circuit low.
right, or you'd have to go in and look for, like you were saying, you'd physically test the battery packs to see what was going on.
But you bring a good
what
point
the
up.
circumstances were. I mean, is this a 10-year-old car or a 1-year-old car?
But you bring a good point up. Let's say if you want to know it's a sensor problem. Sensors don't carry current. If we unplug the wires going to the sensor and we didn't see the reading change, it's like a coolant sensor, for example, right? If I unplug it and it's still telling me it's the same reading, I must have some resistance somewhere thinking it's making a reading, right? Because it's a change in voltage and resistance that makes the sensor give us a temperature. If I jump the sensor, shouldn't I see the temperature go all the way up? Versus when I unplug the sensor, shouldn't I see minus 40 for argument's sake?
Right.
You would play the same game. You know, a class I did recently, we utilized a sensor simulator in a class. And amazing how many people don't really understand sensor simulators. They're a great tool. I wish companies really made them. Launch has one, but you got to use it, I think, with their scan tool. You know, I always told them, make one separate. People don't have, like I have the old SST. I also have the Bernie tool here that, I could show when a car doesn't start, I can make a crank sensor signal. We had a BMW recently came in, right in this bay. And you know what we did? Bill wasn't 100% sure. He goes, it's intermittent. I go, watch this. Unplug that thing. It's not starting now. Hook Bernie's up. I dialed his scope in. We started the car up. Now, sometimes you don't get the right voltage or frequency. You do need to know if it's AC, DC. But what I did is I know Bosch basically, or German car manufacturers, want a peak-to-peak of at least 2.5 volts. And if you go into service information, if they say minimal peak voltage 2.5, well, that means you can have even a 5-volt signal, AC. And if it's a square wave, is it 5 volts going there, 12 volts, 8 volts, depending on the manufacturer?
Right.
So we had the right voltage, and all I did was play as he cranked it. I dialed it in, the car ran beautiful. Nope, got a bad crank sensor. Why? Because I checked from all the way outside, it was a pain in the ass, back near the firewall on this Audi, okay? Right to the computer, everything was good. Same thing we can do with this particular thing, or any sensor.
I hope that answered the question.
I hope. a lengthy yacker.
Yeah.
Okay, so those are some of the things that you can do on a Ford, and the IDS is really a great tool to have. There's many other things, but time is ticking, per se. So I do want to give you a bonus thing that you don't have in your handout. I'm going to switch off that, Pete, and I'm going to go back
And while Jay's getting that set up, guys, if you haven't, there is that downloadable link right under the player that you can download this presentation.
Yeah, there's a handout there.
If you haven't already.
And
Right.
Gee, while you're doing that, what was the name of Mike Dabrowski's, the charger? What was that again?
The Revolt.
Revolt, Matt, Revolt, go look online for Revolt. Matt is out in Arizona. I still use the charger once in a while when we got multiple batteries to do. Not bad, but it does it differently. You know, if you want to spend, I'm not sure, you can contact Nuvant and you can get the same big unit we have here. And there are plenty of shops doing that. Now this is a more precise way of doing it because it's doing it per cell. You know, it'd be like you charging a battery off a battery off a battery, not as good as being right on it, right?
Right.
But you pick your poison. I'm sure that's going to be, I think Marquatos and all of them are 15,000 plus north.
Yeah.
Meaning they're up there.
Expensive.
So $1,000, can't go wrong. I did many batteries for years with it.
Yeah.
Okay. And Mike Dabrowski, if you want to see some interesting stuff, you may want to check, go to the ATTS website, go to the links, and I forgot what he calls his website, but look there, something 99 or maybe 99 MPG. Go check Mike out, he's a sharp dude. Definitely a sharp dude. All right, so let's go to this thing. Now this thing just came in. I got to fix the date on my computer, by the way. It was yesterday, because today is Saturday, right? Yesterday was Friday. This guy came in, he's the guy who had the blown engine. And make a long story short, when the engine blew up from poor maintenance, by the way, you know, didn't change his oil, quick, big box store, cheap oil changes, wrong stuff. It exploded. The connecting rod went through the block on both sides, put a hole through the compressor, electric compressor. This is a hybrid compressor, gentlemen. And put a hole in his fan. So we replaced the motor, we replaced the air conditioning condenser, put in the right ND11 oil, did the whole thing, sucked it down because the system was open for a while by the time we had it. It was working okay, and now it came in with this code for us to do a recheck. I think it has 1,500 miles on since we did the job. We really wanted them back in 500 just to check the oil level and all that. Everything was good anyway. No oil use, everything looks good, but we did come up with a code. So we ran this, we're not worried about his navigation system. He did not want to go for an update on the engine. He did not want to go for
the hybrid control.
2 of them on hybrid control that we suggested, you know, because of the price. That's his prerogative. At any rate, going through the 24 computers here, this is what we had. The B1498, communication malfunction, AC inverter local. Now, the inverter, if you understand, excuse me, I'm so sorry with my throat. The inverter is going to send voltage, Pete, to the fully electric hybrid compressor, air conditioning compressor. Some compressors are AC voltage, and some of them convert that. If they're DC, they have a built-in changer AC to DC built in the unit. Means it's more money. This is one of the expensive ones. $3,000 if it's new. $29.90 something, 98. Okay. Of course, he went for a used one or salvage one, as they like to say. So we put that in. It worked for a bit. Here's what we have now as the issue. Once it sees an issue, like Pete said, it will shut the unit down. Not the car, but the unit. Will not allow the system to operate. Went into all data, as you can see here, to give you an idea. It tells us air conditioned system, malfunction, AC inverter local. And here's what the code could be. Communication line error or open between the power management control ECU and the compressor with motor assembly. Or high voltage power source is shut off. Well, if the high voltage power source was shut off, how would the car run? So that would be the interlock switch. It's not that. Here are some of the problems. Excuse me. Harness or connector between power management control ECU, compressor with motor assembly, and body ground. Is not that. We checked that quickly. Power management with the ECU. Not that. Compressor with motor assembly.
Well, that's brand
Doesn't, it ran, it's not that. And what we did, with high voltage gloves on, we unplugged, power off, plugged, power back on to see if we were getting power there. No power. So that tells me it's the wire going up or the inverter itself, okay? And of course, the guy doesn't want to spend the money, but he complained because we had a 72-degree day the other day, and he didn't have air conditioning. Probably would force them to come in. Engine wire and harness or connector between a compressor motor assembly and inverter. Well, from what we can see, now I'm not saying that this wire doesn't have an open in it. It's a possibility, but we did not have time to check that out. So what we would do with that is we would shut the main power off, make sure the capacitors are drained down in the inverter, open the inverter up, use our meg ohm meter, go on that circuit, and read factory information, because it may tell you put 500 volts, put 250 volts. Years ago, you used to say whatever power going through, you double the power, but Toyota has specific recommendations. So we would look at that. I would think roughly they're going to say about 250. I would put my other meter, my Cat 3 certified meter, another fluke at the other end. Take the 1587 meg ohm fluke, put the voltage through up top. If I get voltage coming through the bottom, the wire's good.
Yeah.
And I would check both legs. If I'm putting it through this leg, well, this one better not have it unless what?
Right,
They're touching.
yeah, yeah.
But then I would get a short. But I still go testing it the same way. If I get voltage through both of them, it ain't the wire. I ruled the wire right out. And now I'm down to two things. Is either a fuse connector in the computer or in the inverter setup, or, and I don't think I have a picture of that. Oh, yes I do. We'll go back to this here. So you see this? This is the inverter cover off, and it tells you can measure resistance. Well, the meg ohm meter does resistance, but there's nothing like a real good voltage test.
Right.
Because the whole idea of a meg ohm meter is to pressurize it, like we would pressurize a pipe. Voltage is pressure, right? Current is flow. We would want to see, if we pressurize it, does it hold or is it leaking somewhere?
Yeah.
So we would do both. We would follow their procedure. Notice it says inverter assembly or electric fuse. Maybe that blew. Maybe it was weak. Okay?
Yeah.
Now, you know, one thing, to be totally honest with you, it was a freezing day when my guy did the air condition on the car. And you don't hear something clicking on. It got cold in there, from hot to cold. And not that our shop is ever really cold, but it's possible that the ambient temperature from heated air felt real cool, and it may have been not working at that time either, but we had no code.
Right.
That's why we think it was working, okay? But right here, maybe the fuse was weakened, okay? And now it finally bit the dust. So we would check from here, or the wiring going down from here as I was talking, take the fuse out, and then you would check all the way down the wiring harness. And notice how they give you below 1 ohm, 10,000 ohms or higher. They give you specifications to go by.
And I want to make sure I interject this too as well. You heard Gene mention that if you're not already familiar with this, if you're going to do any kind of measurements on these high voltage systems, you do need a meter that's capable of doing that. That's Cat 3 or higher, 1,000 volts AC rated. And not just the meter, you have to make sure the leads you're using are rated to Cat 3.
And wear your gloves.
And wear your gloves when you're doing this, absolutely. So that's one thing. The other that you mentioned, the meg ohm meter and also now the milliohm meter for testing a lot of these circuits. In fact, in our, I think our January issue, maybe our February issue, Dave Mackholtz did a nice little piece on the meg ohm and milliohm meter.
Yeah.
So you can find that on Motor Age's website.
Beautiful. And question?
Yeah, does a J2534 interface and a Ford subscription provide a factory scan tool for Ford vehicles like you used to scan the demo vehicle?
Okay, does a J2534 and the Ford interface basically give you the ability to get all the stuff I just showed in the couple of screenshots that we did with the Ford IDS? Not currently. Now, they were supposed to have it if that was a Honda, if it was a Toyota, if it's a GM, if it's a BMW, if it's a Volvo. Yes, yes, and yes, and more yes. Probably 10, 11 car companies or more. I think it's 12. But not yet. Ford, for some reason, has not done that, to my knowledge, as of today. In 2018, which we're over a month in, this was supposed to be done. We do have a good guy at the head of NASTF. Skip Potter had to leave. He did a great job getting us there. It's a lot of hard work.
Yeah.
But now we have Donnie Safer. And Donnie, you know, he owns a shop, or his dad and him own a shop. And believe me, he's going to fight for us to get the right stuff. And they're on the case of even GM with the VIN. You know, one VIN, it makes it very tough for a shop to spend that much money.
Yeah.
And you need these tools in many cases to really do the job correctly.
So
right now, the answer would be no, but I think it's very close from my understanding.
So to clarify for the person who asked the question, so if he wanted Ford capability, what would he have to do, and what can he look at it?
He could buy the subscription, which is not expensive. I think it's $600 or $750 a year,
right?
Somewhere in that range. You would have to buy the VCM2. That's this tool right here.
And that's through Ford?
I bought mine through, you could buy it through Ford, but I bought it through AE Tools. And the reason why I bought it through AE Tools, if I buy this through Ford, and it would have been a little cheaper. If I buy this through Ford and I have a problem, try getting through to Ford to help you. I call AE Tools, they get right on my damn computer and they fix it.
And that's a very valuable point.
And I don't care about spending a few bucks more if it's going to save me from aggravation.
Right. And there's been a couple of examples. Jamie Lazarus, who also writes for us, has had numerous instances where he's had to go in behind the shop to replace a module where the as-built data has been lost and to try to find that out. So like you're saying, if you got to get support help, you want a company that's going to stamp and be there for you when you're doing that. So that's a good thing.
You know, on the YTech, Chrysler YTech, AE Tools, Joey, he does all the support, even for the dealers. He is the main guy in the country. Well, one day I had a Chrysler of my own to do, which I left near the end of the day, and 2 for different body shops. I did them. By the time I went to do my customer's car, which I had to get the hell out of here, it was a transmission thing, and she needed to get her car back.
Sure.
Well, guess what? I had an issue. I'm not getting through to Chrysler. You know, I call AE Tools. They were very busy. Lucky I know Joey personally. I gave Joey a call. He helped me out because there's lockouts. Now when you go in, they constantly want all these rolling numbers. They're all codes.
Right.
They locked me out for some crazy reason. Not that I didn't have a subscription. Joey went on my computer. He did some hocus pocus to use his just temporarily so I can do the car. And then I was back to using my own and no problems.
Yeah.
What's that worth? Is it worth spending a little more money than, you know, going to XYZ and you get no support? Because they had these at one point. See, it is AE Tools right in the back.
Yeah.
They had these like a crazy deal. I think you could have bought this, I think like $750. They had a deal on them at SEMA Apex after the show. But again, you're going to get, I like service because if I have a problem, same with my Honda tool. When I was doing a class one time, I called AE Tools up. He goes, okay, are you on that computer? I said, no, I got another computer to do a Toyota on the other side in the other part of the shop. As I'm doing a class, they got on it, fixed it. He left me a little note. You're all set to go. Use the tool, no problem.
Yeah.
What's that worth?
Now, the other side of that, too, guys, is that, I mean, we're talking about specifically the hybrid stuff tonight.
Right.
And how much more of an advantage these factory tools can provide you. But if you're looking, again, to making that investment, again, look at what's common to your business. What models, what make do you see all the time? let's just say that it is a Toyota product. Well, the other thing you can do with that Toyota tool is to install those updates when they're required. And what are you doing with those now?
They're doing nothing. They're making no money.
Are you sending that to the dealer? And what's he? I know when I was still active in the field, I mean, the dealers local in our area were charging $100, $130 a crack to program the car, our cost, right? So that's money that can go into your pocket.
That's what we do. We recommend that we always look up what it is. You just shouldn't randomly program.
Right.
But it's money in our pocket. And I'll give you another example. Let's take, and I think I wrote this in Motor Age. We had a parts store, two of them down the road, that put batteries in cars. Well, they put them in Jeeps, and if you don't follow the right procedure, in the odometer, it now says error, and you can't get rid of it with an aftermarket scan tool. So what do? We get the car. They recommend that people come here. We have the factory software. We go in. We can reset it. Yeah. Otherwise, you're going to be going for an IC, an instrument cluster.
Right.
And you got to go into the body module, go to the IC, go in and have the ability to reset it that you're not going to have in many tools.
And you're not doing that out of the kindness of your heart.
I don't wake up for free, is what I have to say.
So,
no. And it's not that you don't want to help some people. Sometimes, like, I'll be honest with you, one of the parts stores sends us a lot of work, and even though they do stuff like that, I covered the guy's butt, and you know, from that, they don't touch the cars anymore. They just go to Auto Clinic up there. G will take care of you, not a problem.
Right.
Same with BMWs. We had a couple of people, they put a BMW battery, they bought off them in their car. All of a sudden, a month or two later, they got issues. They got lights coming on in the dash. Their car's not running right. Their fuel consumption's different. Why? The engine is running at a different speed, thinking the old battery's still in the car. It is overcharging this thing, giving them a problem.
Right.
So you get what you pay for.
Yeah.
So there is something that I think you should get involved in it. And if you do a lot of Fords, you know, I always look at it. I could use this tool that I like, spending $1,200 for it. You know, my old one worked just fine. But that's the way the world is. And I made enough money with it to pay it off.
Bottom line is,
Same thing. I had to buy the new Chrysler little pod. Okay? I have my old pod. It's worthless as tits on a bowl. But I had to go buy the new one. Why? Because I have to have the latest software to do this.
Yeah.
So you're going to have to spend some money. You know, I wish they really did do it. And I thought since Honda did it, Teradyne, same company, makes the software. Just Ford Motor Company is not doing that release yet with J2534 that I know of.
Yeah.
I would say, you know, I do speak to the guys at DrewTech, and I will ask them, probably they'll be at the big event as well. I'll ask them and see if there's anything new down the line. Yeah. Like sometimes when Honda was doing it, they told me something, but I'd be in a wooden box if I told anyone that it was going to happen before it actually did. They go, hey, that's what's coming, but you can't tell anyone that's coming because the OEs don't want that. But we'll keep you posted on that. Let's finish this up. So here, the other way, you see the RPM. Notice I have 32 target. Before I went to go check the wiring, I kind of jumped ahead. Here's what I did. I went into bidirectional testing. You know why? I want to see if the command through the computer going to the inverter can go, hello, give me something.
Right.
If it works, and when I did this, we also had it unplugged, first power off. We did it with it all connected first. Then we did the power off in case the motor was bad. We put our meter there. Shouldn't I get a voltage signal? Of course. And that's when you have gloves on and at least a Cat 3 meter to make sure. And we had nothing. So now I know it's, as I said, from the bottom or the top right there, it's something from here down. I don't know if it's just a fuse or not. You know, as I always write, or multiple times I've written in articles, I don't have the authority to fix the car. I wish people just came in and said, you know, G, just fix it. I don't care. I need the car fixed. No, no. People don't give you that. You know, they want to say, can you do it the cheapest way? They all have a problem. The kids are going to college. You've all heard it. You know the deal. But if I had the say in fixing the car or not fixing the car, I'm going to do it. And many times, no lie, in my career, and especially in my business, because you couldn't do it working for someone, I would tell someone, you know what? I'm going to fix your car, okay? If you don't pay me, that's fine, but I know I want to fix this car because I'm going to learn something from it. And most of the people, God's honest truth, said, hey, what do I owe you? I'm going to pay you for that. Now my car is working good. And we just did one on my buddy AC's car, who didn't want to do that. Didn't need this, the oil pressure switch, had all these problems at Ace. Stop putting Band-Aids on when you need frickin' surgery. Let me do my job. I don't tell you when you're building my kitchen, don't do that. I just go, hey, do whatever the hell you got to do.
Yeah.
That's what we need people to do for us. So are there any other questions from you? Hopefully you learned a bunch. Plugged, power back on to see if we were getting power there. No power. So that tells me it's the wire going up or the inverter itself, okay? And of course, the guy doesn't want to spend the money, but he complained because we had a 72-degree day the other day, and he didn't have air conditioning. Probably would force them to come in. Engine wire and harness are connected between the compressor motor assembly and inverter. Well, from what we can see, now I'm not saying that this wire doesn't have an open in it. It's a possibility, but we did not have time to check that out. So what we would do with that is we would shut the main power off, make sure the capacitors are drained down in the inverter, open the inverter up, use our meg ohm meter, go on that circuit, and read factory information, because it may tell you put 500 volts, put 250 volts. Years ago, you used to say whatever power going through, you double the power, but Toyota has specific recommendations. So we would look at that. I would think roughly they're going to say about 250. I would put my other meter, my Cat 3 certified meter, another fluke at the other end. Take the 1587 meg ohm fluke, put the voltage through up top. If I get voltage coming through the bottom, the wire's good. Yeah. And I would check both legs. If I'm putting it through this leg, well, this one better not have it unless what?
Right,
they're touching.
Yeah.
But then I would get a short. But I still go testing it the same way. If I get voltage through both of them, it ain't the wire. I ruled the wire right out. And now I'm down to two things. Is either a fuse connector in the computer or in the inverter setup, or, and I don't think I have a picture of that. Oh, yes I do. We'll go back to this here. So you see this? This is the inverter cover off. And it tells you can measure resistance. Well, the meg ohm meter does resistance, but there's nothing like a real good voltage test.
Right.
Because the whole idea of a meg ohm meter is to pressurize it, like we would pressurize a pipe. Voltage is pressure, right? Current is flow. We would want to see if we pressurize it, does it hold or is it leaking somewhere?
Yeah.
So we would do both. We would follow their procedure. Notice it says inverter assembly or electric fuse. Maybe that blew. Maybe it was weak. Okay?
Yep.
Now, you know, one thing, to be totally honest with you, it was a freezing day when my guy did the air condition on the car. And you don't hear something clicking on. It got cold in there from hot to cold. And not that our shop is ever really cold, but it's possible that the ambient temperature from heated air felt real cool, and it may have been not working at that time either, but we had no code.
Right.
That's why we think it was working, okay? But right here, maybe the fuse was weakened, okay? And now it finally bit the dust. So we would check from here, or the wiring going down from here as I was talking, take the fuse out, and then you would check all the way down the wiring harness. And notice how they give you below 1 ohm, 10,000 ohms or higher. They give you specifications to go by.
And I want to make sure I interject this too as well. You heard Gene mention that if you're not already familiar with this, if you're going to do any kind of measurements on these high voltage systems, you do need a meter that's capable of doing that. That's Cat 3 or higher, 1,000 volts AC rated. And not just the meter, you have to make sure the leads you're using are rated to Cat 3.
And wear your gloves.
And wear your gloves when you're doing this, absolutely. So that's one thing. The other that you mentioned, the meg ohm meter and also now the milliohm meter for testing a lot of these circuits. In fact, in our, I think our January issue, maybe our February issue. Dave Mackholtz did a nice little piece on the
Yes,
meg ohm
yes,
and milliohm meter.
yeah.
So you can find that on Motor Age's website.
Beautiful. And question?
Yeah, does a J2534 interface and a Ford subscription provide a factory scan tool for Ford vehicles like you used to scan the demo vehicles?
Okay, does a J2534 and the Ford interface basically give you the ability to get all the stuff I just showed in the couple of screenshots that we did with the Ford IDS? Not currently. Now, they were supposed to have it if that was a Honda, if it was a Toyota, if it's a GM, if it's a BMW, if it's a Volvo. Yes, yes, and yes, and more yes. Probably 10, 11 car companies or more. I think it's 12. But not yet. Ford, for some reason, has not done that, to my knowledge, as of today. In 2018, which we're over a month in, this was supposed to be done. We do have a good guy at the head of NASTF. Skip Potter had to leave. He did a great job getting us there. It's a lot of hard work.
Yeah.
But now we have Donnie Safer. And Donnie, you know, he owns a shop, or his dad and him own a shop. And believe me, he's going to fight for us to get the right stuff. And they're on the case of even GM with the VIN. You know, one VIN, it makes it very tough for a shop to spend that much money.
Yeah.
And you need these tools in many cases to really do the job correctly.
So
right now, the answer would be no, but I think it's very close from my understanding.
So to clarify for the person who asked the question, so if he wanted Ford capability, what would he have to do, and what can he look at it?
He could buy the subscription, which is not expensive. I think it's $600 or $750 a year,
right?
Somewhere in that range. You would have to buy the VCM2. That's this tool right here.
And that's through Ford?
I bought mine through, you could buy it through Ford, but I bought it through AE Tools. And the reason why I bought it through AE Tools, if I buy this through Ford, and it would have been a little cheaper. If I buy this through Ford and I have a problem, try getting through to Ford to help you. I call AE Tools, they get right on my damn computer and they fix it.
And that's a very valuable point.
And I don't care about spending a few bucks more if it's going to save me from aggravation.
Right. And there's been a couple of examples. Jamie Lazarus, who also writes for us, has had numerous instances where he's had to go in behind the shop to replace a module where the as-built data has been lost and to try to find that out. So like you're saying, if you got to get support help, you want a company that's going to stamp and be there for you when you're doing that. So that's a good thing.
You know, on the YTech, Chrysler YTech, AE Tools, Joey, he does all the support, even for the dealers. He is the main guy in the country. Well, one day I had a Chrysler of my own to do, which I left near the end of the day, and 2 for different body shops. I did them. By the time I went to do my customer's car, which I had to get the hell out of here, it was a transmission thing, and she needed to get her car back.
Sure.
Well, guess what? I had an issue. I'm not getting through to Chrysler. You know, I call AE Tools. They were very busy. Lucky I know Joey personally. I gave Joey a call. He helped me out because there's lockouts. Now when you go in, they constantly want all these rolling numbers. They're all codes.
Right.
They locked me out for some crazy reason. Not that I didn't have a subscription. Joey went on my computer. He did some hocus pocus to use his just temporarily so I can do the car. And then I was back to using my own and no problems.
Yeah.
What's that worth? Is it worth spending a little more money than, you know, going to XYZ and get no support? Because they had these at one point. See, it is AE Tools right in the back.
Yeah.
They had these like a crazy deal. I think you could have bought this, I think like $750. They had a deal on them at SEMA Apex after the show. But again, you're going to get, I like service because if I have a problem, same with my Honda tool. When I was doing a class one time, I called AE Tools up. He goes, okay, you on that computer? I said, no, I got another computer to do a Toyota on the other side in the other part of the shop. As I'm doing a class, they got on it, fixed it. He left me a little note. You're all set to go. Use the tool, no problem.
Yeah.
What's that worth?
Now, the other side of that, too, guys, is that, I mean, we're talking about specifically the hybrid stuff tonight, but and how much more of an advantage these factory tools can provide you. But if you're looking, again, to making that investment, again, look at what's common to your business. What models, what make do you see all the time? Let's just say that it is a Toyota product. Well, the other thing you can do with that Toyota tool is to install those updates when they're required. And what are you doing with those now?
They're doing nothing. They're making no money.
Are you sending that to the dealer? And what's he? I know when I was active in the field, I mean, the dealers local in our area were charging $100, $130 a crack to program the car, our cost, right? So that's money that can go into your pocket.
That's what we do. We recommend that we always look up what it is. You just shouldn't randomly program.
Right.
But it's money in our pocket. And I'll give you another example. Let's take, and I think I wrote this in Motor Age. We had a parts store, 2 of them down the road, that put batteries in cars. Well, they put them in Jeeps, and if you don't follow the right procedure, in the odometer, it now says error, and you can't get rid of it with an aftermarket scan tool. So what do? We get the car. They recommend that people come here. We have the factory software. We go in. We can reset it. Yeah. Otherwise, you're going to be going for an IC, an instrument cluster.
Right.
And you got to go into the body module, go to the IC, go in and have the ability to reset it that you're not going to have in many tools.
And you're not doing that out of the kindness of your heart.
I don't wake up for free, is what I have to say.
So,
no. And it's not that you don't want to help some people. Sometimes, like, I'll be honest with you, one of the parts stores sends us a lot of work, and even though they do stuff like that, I covered the guy's butt, and you know, from that, they don't touch the cars anymore. They just go to Auto Clinic up there. G will take care of you, not a problem.
Right.
Same with BMWs. We had a couple of people, they put a BMW battery, they bought off them in their car. All of a sudden, a month or 2 later, they got issues. They got lights coming on in the dash. Their car's not running right. Their fuel consumption's different. Why? The engine is running at a different speed, thinking the old battery's still in the car. It is overcharging this thing, giving them a problem.
Right.
So you get what you pay for.
Yeah.
So there is something that I think you should get involved in it. And if you do a lot of Fords, you know, I always look at it. I could use this tool that I like, spending $1,200 for it. You know, my old one worked just fine. But that's the way the world is. And I made enough money with it to pay it off.
Bottom line is,
Same thing. I had to buy the new Chrysler little pod. Okay? I have my old pod. It's worthless as tits on a bowl. But I had to go buy the new one. Why? Because I have to have the latest software to do this.
Yeah.
So you're going to have to spend some money. You know, I wish they really did do it. And I thought since Honda did it, Teradyne, same company, makes the software.
Yeah.
Just Ford Motor Company is not doing that release yet with J2534 that I know of.
Yeah.
I would say, you know, I do speak to the guys at DrewTech, and I will ask them, probably they'll be at the big event as well. I'll ask them and see if there's anything new down the line. Yeah. Like sometimes when Honda was doing it, they told me something, but I'd be in a wooden box if I told anyone that it was going to happen before it actually did. They go, hey, that's what's coming, but you can't tell anyone that's coming because the OEs don't want that. But we'll keep you posted on that. Let's finish this up. So here, the other way, you see the RPM. Notice I have 32 target. Before I went to go check the wiring, I kind of jumped ahead. Here's what I did. I went into bi-directional testing. You know why? I want to see if the command through the computer going to the inverter can go, hello, give me something.
Right.
If it works, and when I did this, we also had it unplugged, first power off. We did it with it all connected first. Then we did the power off in case the motor was bad. We put our meter there. Shouldn't I get a voltage signal? Of course. And that's when you have gloves on and at least a Cat 3 meter to make sure. And we had nothing. So now I know it's, as I said, from the bottom or the top right there, it's something from here down. I don't know if it's just a fuse or not. You know, as I always write, or multiple times I've written in articles, I don't have the authority to fix the car. I wish people just came in and said, you know, G, just fix it. I don't care. I need the car fixed. No, no. People don't give you that. You know, they want to say, can you do it the cheapest way? They all have a problem. The kids are going to college. You've all heard it. You know the deal. But if I had the say in fixing the car or not fixing the car, I'm going to do it. and many times, no lie, in my career, and especially in my business, because you couldn't do it working for someone, I would tell someone, you know what? I'm going to fix your car, okay? If you don't pay me, that's fine, but I know I want to fix this car because I'm going to learn something from it. And most of the people, God's honest truth, said, hey, what do I owe you? I'm going to pay you for that. Now my car is working good. And we just did one on my buddy AC's car, who didn't want to do that. Didn't need this, the oil pressure switch, had all these problems at Ace. Stop putting Band-Aids on when you need frickin' surgery. Let me do my job. I don't tell you when you're building my kitchen, don't do that. I just go, hey, do whatever the hell you got to do.
Yeah.
That's what we need people to do for us. So are there any other questions from you? Hopefully you learned a bunch tonight. We do have a couple of more things we want to talk about. The Auto Mechanica show. This would be August 8th to the 10th down in Atlanta, Georgia. They'll also be at our big event. And of course, Pete runs the whole training end of that.
Yeah, we've got some really good trainers, including yours truly over here. That's going to be there.
No pun intended, truly.
Yeah, probably any one of the top independents that you can think of will be there. So we hope to see you there to get some very valuable training.
That'll be great. TST, don't forget our big event. Saturday, March the 17th, St. Patrick's Day this year. Then we go back to the end of the month in 19 and 21 will be the end of March. So we won't step on any toes, but the hotel kind of dictates. First, go green, no paper manual. You get a free Android tablet, the battery, the backpack. There's about 25 seats left. That's it. So we are up there at over 570 techs and shop owners will be out, 30 vendors. It's going to be a real big event. So we hope to see you there. And if you're interested in a hybrid class, here's where I make my money through Automotive Technician Training, ATTS. We have a 3-day hands-on intensive hybrid class. You can give me a call or send me an email. We'll send the information out. You get high voltage gloves, the covers, the bag, goggles. You get 2 different manuals, full color, DVD. We give you full food from breakfast, lunch, dinner, and snacks, and anything to keep you awake through the class. It's a lot of hands-on besides good stuff in there. So I want to thank you on behalf of TST and ATTS. And Pete?
Yeah, thanks so much for coming out on Saturday night and hanging out with us. We hope you enjoyed the webinar. Again, what we'll do now is we will take down the video, we'll get it cleaned up, edited, and put back up on the site as a recorded webcast. But guys, give me a break. Give me a few days to get that done. And then if you have any questions, of course, you know how to get a hold of me. Just send me an email. I'll be glad to share that with you if I don't have the answer for you. And we'll see you again in 3 months, hopefully.
Yes, God willing.
All right, good
Have
night,
a good
everybody.
night.